The billionaire's hand was already on her waist when Elena Cruz realized she'd made a terrible mistake. She'd taken this job to pay her mother's medical bills, nothing more. But now Daniel Hayes was pulling her close in front of 300 people, his mouth inches from hers, cameras flashing like lightning. His father's face had gone purple. His fiancée, his actual fiancée, was screaming. And Elena, who'd been in Manhattan exactly 9 days, was about to have her first kiss broadcast across every business network in America. This is their story. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. The Waldorf Astoria smelled like money and lies. Elena Cruz stood near the back wall of the grand ballroom, trying to make herself invisible. She'd learned that trick growing up poor in Queens, how to take up less space, how to become wallpaper when rich people were around. Her black dress was from H&M, but she'd steamed it 3 times and the shoes were real leather, even if they'd cost her 2 weeks of grocery money. First impressions mattered, Daniel Hayes had told her during the interview. Looking at the room now, the crystal chandeliers, the ice sculptures, the women dripping in diamonds that cost more than her childhood home, Elena wondered if she'd understood what he meant. She was supposed to be observing, learning. Daniel Hayes was 32, ran a tech empire worth $4 billion, and apparently needed an executive assistant who could think 3 steps ahead. The job posting had been vague. The salary had not been. $85,000 a year, plus benefits. Elena had stared at that number for 10 minutes before applying. It was more than her father had made in his best year driving trucks. The interview had been strange. Daniel had barely asked about her resume. Instead, he'd wanted to know about her family, her neighborhood, what she did when things went wrong. "I don't need someone who went to Yale," he'd said, leaning back in his chair. "I need someone who knows how to survive." Elena had gotten the job. 3 days later, she was here. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed through the speakers. Elena turned to see a man at the podium, late 60s, silver hair, expensive suit that probably cost more than her car. "I'd like to introduce my son, Daniel Hayes, CEO of Hayes Technologies." Applause erupted. Elena watched as Daniel walked onto the small stage, and something in her chest tightened. She'd seen him twice since the interview, once in passing, once during a brief orientation where he'd explained absolutely nothing about what she was supposed to do. Both times he'd been distant, professional, cold even. But now, under the lights, he looked different, younger. His dark hair was slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it. His jaw was tight, and his eyes, Elena could see it even from 20 feet away, were scanning the room like he was looking for an exit. "Thank you." Daniel's voice was clear but flat. "I'm honored to be here tonight for the annual Hayes Technologies Investor Gala. As many of you know, this company was built on innovation, integrity, and family." The silver-haired man, Daniel's father, Elena realized, had stepped up beside him, gripping his shoulder. "Which is why tonight is so special. Daniel, why don't you tell everyone the good news?" Daniel's expression didn't change, but Elena saw his hand curl into a fist at his side. "Actually, Dad, I think Daniel is engaged," his father beamed at the crowd, "to Vanessa Hartwell, daughter of Senator James Hartwell. The wedding will be next spring." The room exploded in applause. Elena felt her stomach drop. Engaged? Daniel hadn't mentioned anything about being engaged. Not in the interview, not during orientation, not... A woman glided onto the stage in a white dress that probably cost more than Elena's yearly salary. Blonde, perfect smile, the kind of beauty that came from good genes and better plastic surgeons. Vanessa Hartwell wrapped her arm through Daniel's and waved at the crowd like she was born to do it. Daniel stood completely still. His face was blank, but Elena had grown up reading people's survival mechanisms. She knew what someone looked like when they were trapped. "Speech!" someone shouted. Others joined in. "Speech! Speech!" Vanessa leaned into the microphone. "We're so grateful for all your support. Daniel and I have known each other since we were children, and it feels like destiny that we're finally—" "I can't do this," Daniel's voice cut through hers. The room went quiet. Vanessa's smile froze. "Daniel, what? I'm sorry." He pulled his arm away from her. "I can't marry you." Elena heard someone gasp. Maybe it was her. Daniel's father grabbed his arm. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice was low but audible in the sudden silence. "We have an agreement. The Hartwells—" "I don't care about your agreements." Daniel's voice was getting louder. "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not marrying someone I don't love to make shareholders happy. You selfish." His father's face was turning red. "Do you have any idea what this will cost? The Hartwell connection alone is worth— I'm in love with someone else." The ballroom went completely silent. Elena watched, frozen, as Daniel scanned the crowd. His eyes moved across the sea of faces, past the reporters with their cameras, past the executives and investors, and his eyes locked on hers. Elena's blood turned to ice. "No. No, no, no." Daniel was walking off the stage, walking toward her. Every head in the room turned to follow his path. "Daniel!" Vanessa's voice cracked. "Daniel, what are you—" He didn't stop. He walked straight through the crowd, and people moved out of his way like water parting. Elena couldn't move. Her feet were glued to the floor. Her brain was screaming at her to run, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Daniel stopped in front of her. Up close, she could see that his eyes were hazel, brown with flecks of green. She could see a small scar above his left eyebrow. She could see that his hands were shaking. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Only she could hear it. "I need you to trust me." "What?" He kissed her. The world exploded. Cameras flashed so bright, Elena saw stars. People were shouting. Someone screamed, probably Vanessa. Daniel's hand was on her waist, his other hand cupping her face, and his lips were warm and firm, and this wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. He pulled back. His forehead rested against hers for just a second. "Play along," he breathed. "Please." Then he turned to face the crowd, his arms still around Elena's waist, and said clearly, "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Elena Cruz." The next 10 minutes were a blur. Daniel's father was shouting. Vanessa was being escorted out by security, her mascara running, screaming that she'd sue them both. Reporters swarmed like sharks, shouting questions Elena couldn't process. Someone asked her name. Someone else asked how long they'd been together. A camera was shoved in her face. "No comment," Daniel said firmly, guiding Elena toward a side door. "We'll release a statement tomorrow." "Mr. Hayes! Mr. Hayes, is it true you've been having an affair? Is your father aware of this relationship? Miss Cruz, how did you two meet?" Daniel pushed through them, his grip on Elena's hand tight enough to hurt. They burst through a service door and into a dim hallway. Elena heard him lock it behind them. The sound of the shouting became muffled. She ripped her hand away from his. "What the hell was that?" Her voice came out too loud, bouncing off the walls. "What the hell did you just do?" Daniel leaned against the door, breathing hard. His tie was crooked. "I know. I'm sorry. I couldn't. You kissed me. In front of 300 people. On camera." Elena's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her thighs. "I've been working for you for 3 days. I don't even know your middle name." "James. It's James." "I don't care." She was yelling now. She never yelled. "You just told everyone I'm your fiancé. Do you understand what you've done? Those people, those reporters, they're going to find out everything about me. Where I live, where I went to school, my family. I'll protect you." Daniel pushed off the door. "I have lawyers, security, I can—" "Protect me?" Elena laughed, and it sounded hysterical even to her own ears. "You just destroyed my life. I came here to work, to make money so I could pay my mother's hospital bills. And you—" Her voice cracked. She pressed her hands over her face. "Oh my God, my mother, she's going to see this on the news." "Elena, don't." She held up a hand. "Don't say my name like we're friends. We're not friends. You're my boss. My boss who just used me as a human shield in front of the entire world." Silence fell between them. Down the hall, Elena could hear the muffled sound of the gala continuing. Music. Laughter. Like the world hadn't just ended. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "You're right. This was— I shouldn't have—" He stopped, started again. "My father has been controlling my life since I was 18. Every decision, every business move, every relationship. This engagement to Vanessa, I found out about it 2 months ago. He'd already planned everything. The wedding date, The prenup, even where we'd live. That's terrible, Elena said flatly. Still doesn't explain why you decided to ruin my life, too. I panicked. He looked at her, and for the first time she saw something real in his face. Fear. I stood up there and I looked at Vanessa, and I thought about spending the next 50 years doing exactly what he tells me to do, and I couldn't. I saw you standing there, and you looked like the only real person in the room, and I thought, you thought wrong. Elena's voice was cold. She moved toward the door. I quit. Wait. He stepped in front of her. Please, just give me 5 minutes. Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You made a decision and you didn't think about anyone but yourself. That's fine. Rich people do that all the time, but I'm not part of it. She reached for the door handle. I'll give you $1 million. Elena's hand froze. What? Daniel's jaw was set. $1 million, cash, if you pretend to be my fiancé for 1 week. 7 days, that's it. Elena stared at him. You're insane. Probably. He didn't look away. But I'm also desperate. My father is going to do everything he can to discredit this, to force me back with Vanessa. If I show up alone tomorrow, or with some story about a breakup, he wins. But if you're with me, if we make this look real for just a week, I can use that time to restructure the company, remove him from the board, break his control. He took a breath. And you can pay off your mother's medical bills, all of them. Plus have enough left over to never work another job you hate. 1 week of pretending to be your fiancé, Elena said slowly, and you'll give me $1 million. Yes. And after that week, we stage a breakup, mutual decision, went our separate ways, still friends. I'll make sure you're compensated for any media harassment. New apartment if you want it. New identity if you need it. He pulled out his phone. I can have my lawyer draft a contract right now. Everything in writing. Elena's mind was racing. $1 million. Her mother could get the surgery she needed, the good one, at the hospital in Boston, not the clinic in Queens where they'd been waiting for 6 months. Her father could retire from driving nights. Her little brother could finish college without drowning in loans. 7 days. Why me? She asked. You could hire an actress, a model, someone who actually knows how to deal with this kind of attention. Because you're not from my world. Daniel's voice was quiet. Because when my father's investigators look into your background, they'll find exactly what you are, a woman trying to help her family. Not a gold digger, not a social climber, just someone real. He paused. And because you're the only person in that room who looked at me like I was human. Elena wanted to say no. Every rational part of her brain was screaming at her to walk away, to go home, to forget this whole disaster. But she thought about her mother, lying in a hospital bed, trying to smile through the pain. She thought about her father's hands, scarred from decades of manual labor. She thought about her brother, brilliant and hardworking, who dropped out of school because they couldn't afford both tuition and medical bills. 7 days. I want the contract in writing, she said, tonight, and I want half the money up front. Something like relief crossed Daniel's face. Done. And if your father or anyone in your family tries to hurt me or my family, the deal is off and you still pay me the full amount. Agreed. And, Elena swallowed hard, and you never touch me without asking first. No more surprise kisses, no more grabbing my hand. If we have to look like a couple, we do it on my terms. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay, yes. I'm sorry about... I shouldn't have... No, you shouldn't have. Elena looked him in the eye. But I'm not doing this because I like you or trust you. I'm doing this because you're offering me a way out of a hole I've been digging for 3 years. So let's be clear. This is a business transaction. Nothing more. Understood. Elena took a breath, let it out. Then we have a deal, Mom. The contract was 47 pages long. Elena sat in Daniel's penthouse apartment. Of course he had a penthouse, of course he did. Reading every single line while his lawyer, a sharp-faced woman named Margaret Chen, watched her with approval. Most people just skim, Margaret said. Most people aren't pretending to be engaged to a billionaire, Elena replied, not looking up. She was on page 32, the section about media protocols, when she heard a sound from the other room, a child's voice. Daddy? Elena's head snapped up. She looked at Daniel, who had gone completely still. You have a kid? Yes. He stood up quickly. Excuse me. He disappeared through a doorway. Elena heard murmuring, too quiet to make out words. Margaret cleared her throat. His son is 4, she said. Liam. Daniel has full custody. The mother? Died in childbirth. Elena felt something twist in her chest. He's raising him alone? With help, of course. Nanny, cook, driver. But yes, essentially alone. His father wanted him to send Liam to boarding school in Switzerland. Daniel refused. Margaret's expression softened slightly. It's the only thing he's ever successfully fought the old man on. The door opened. Daniel came back, but he looked different now. Tired. There was a stain on his shoulder. Something sticky. Maybe juice. Sorry, nightmare. He's back asleep now. Elena stared at him. This whole time, she'd been thinking of him as just another careless rich person. But he was also a father. A single father who'd built a $4 billion company while raising a child who would never meet his mother. It didn't make what he'd done tonight okay, but it made him more complicated than she'd thought. Page 32, she said, turning back to the contract. It says I'm not allowed to speak to the press without prior approval. I want that changed. If a reporter harasses me, I should be able to tell them to back off. Reasonable, Margaret made a note. We'll revise it to allow defensive statements. They worked through the rest of the contract. By the time they finished, it was past midnight. Elena's eyes burned with exhaustion. She'd been awake for 19 hours. Last thing, Daniel said. He pulled out his phone and tapped a few times. Elena's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and nearly dropped it. $500,000 had just been deposited into her bank account. Half now, half when the week is done, Daniel said, as promised. Elena couldn't speak. She'd never seen that many zeros in her life. She thought about her mother, about the surgery, about calling the hospital tomorrow and saying, yes, we can afford it. We can afford anything. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. Daniel's voice was rough. This is business, remember? Right, business. Elena stood up. Her legs felt shaky. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow we face the world, Daniel said. I'll have a car pick you up at 7. Bring clothes for a few days. You'll be staying here. What? Why? Because as of tonight, you're my fiancé, which means the press is going to camp outside your apartment building. Margaret's already arranged for security at your family's house. He met her eyes. I meant what I said. I'll protect you. Elena wanted to argue, but she was too tired and he was probably right. She'd seen the reporters at the gala. They'd been vicious. Fine. 7 a.m. She picked up her purse. But I'm taking the subway home tonight. I need some time to think. Daniel looked like he wanted to protest, but Margaret touched his arm. I'll have a car follow her, she said quietly. Discreetly. Elena was too exhausted to argue about that too. She just nodded and left. The subway was nearly empty at this hour. Elena sat in a corner seat, her hands pressed against her thighs to stop them from shaking. Her phone kept buzzing, texts from numbers she didn't recognize, notifications that she'd been tagged in photos, friend requests from strangers. She turned it off. At her stop, she climbed the stairs to street level and walked the 3 blocks to her apartment. It was a 5th-floor walk-up in a building that should have been condemned 20 years ago. The hallway smelled like cooking oil and someone's weed. Home. She unlocked the 3 deadbolts on her door and stepped inside. Her apartment was tiny. 1 room with a kitchenette and a bathroom the size of a closet. But it was hers. She'd painted the walls herself, soft blue that reminded her of sky. She'd found the desk at a stoop sale for $20. The bed was from IKEA, the kind you had to assemble yourself. Elena sat down on the edge of the bed and finally let herself feel it. Terror. That's what this was. Pure, cold terror. What had she done? She'd agreed to lie to the entire world, to pretend to love someone she barely knew, to step into a spotlight that would burn away every private corner of her life. For money. She thought about her mother again, tried to hold on to that. This was for her family. 7 days of hell in exchange for a lifetime of security for the people she loved. Her phone was still off, but she knew what would be on it when she turned it back on. Her mother, worried. Her father, confused. Her brother, probably thinking she'd lost her mind. They weren't wrong. Elena lay back on the bed, still in her dress from the gala. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner. She'd been meaning to call the landlord about it for 6 months. She wondered what Daniel's ceiling looked like. Probably perfect. Probably imported from Italy or something. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about the way he'd looked at her in that hallway. Like she was the only person in the world who could save him. She wasn't. She was just a girl from Queens who'd made a deal with the devil because she was desperate enough to risk everything. 7 days. She could do this for 7 days. Elena woke up to someone pounding on her door. "Elena! Elena! Open up!" She scrambled out of bed, her dress wrinkled, her hair a mess. Through the peephole, she saw her brother, Rico. She fumbled with the locks and yanked the door open. "Are you insane?" Rico pushed past her into the apartment. "Have you seen the news? You're everywhere. Mom's losing her mind. Dad almost drove to Manhattan at 5 in the morning, and you weren't answering your phone." "I turned it off," Elena said weakly. Rico spun to face her. He was 23, tall and skinny, with their mother's eyes and their father's stubborn jaw. "Elena, what the hell is going on? Who is this guy? Why are people saying you're engaged?" Elena sank onto her bed. She'd been so focused on the contract, on the money, that she hadn't thought about this part. Her family deserved the truth. But the contract had a non-disclosure clause. She couldn't tell anyone what was really happening, except she looked at Rico's face, worried and angry and scared for her. Family exemption. She'd made sure Margaret put that in. "Close the door," she said. Rico did. Elena took a breath and told him everything. The job, the gala, the kiss, the deal. All of it. When she finished, Rico was staring at her like she'd grown a second head. "You're joking." "I'm not. Elena, this is crazy. You can't just pretend to be engaged to some billionaire for money. What if something goes wrong? What if his family comes after you? What if—" "Rico," she cut him off. "I already transferred money to Mom's hospital. They called her this morning. The surgery is scheduled for next week." Rico stopped, his mouth open, closed. "What? The good surgery? The one in Boston? They're going to fix her heart properly, not just patch it up." Elena's voice cracked. "She's going to be okay." Rico sat down hard on the floor. He put his head in his hands. "Jesus, Elena." "I know it's crazy," she said, "but it's 7 days, 1 week, and then Mom gets to live and Dad can retire and you can go back to school and what about you?" Rico looked up at her. "What happens to you when this is over? When you've been on every news channel and gossip site in the country? When people know your face?" Elena hadn't thought that far ahead. "I'll figure it out." "Elena, I can do 7 days." She said it firmly, trying to convince herself as much as him. "I can smile and stand next to him and pretend I'm in love. It's just acting, and then I walk away and we never see each other again." Rico studied her face. "You really think it'll be that simple?" No, she didn't, but she said, "Yes." He didn't believe her. She could tell. But he was also thinking about their mother, about the surgery, about all the things that $500,000 could fix. She saw the moment he decided not to fight her on it. "Okay," he said quietly, "but I'm here. If anything happens, if he hurts you or his family threatens you or any of this goes wrong, you call me immediately. I will. Promise me." "I promise." Rico stood up and pulled her into a hug. He smelled like the cologne he couldn't really afford and the laundry detergent from their mom's house. Safe. Familiar. 7 days, he said into her hair, "and then you come home." 7 days, Elena repeated. When he left, she turned her phone back on. It immediately started buzzing with notifications, hundreds of them. She ignored them all and called her mother. "Mija." Her mother's voice was thick with tears. "The hospital called. They said someone paid for everything. Was that you? How did you—" "It's okay, Mama." Elena squeezed her eyes shut. "Everything's going to be okay. But the news, they're saying you're engaged and I don't understand. I'll explain everything later, I promise. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" A long pause. Then, "Always, Mija, always." Elena talked to her mother for 20 minutes, dodging questions, making promises she wasn't sure she could keep. When she finally hung up, it was 6:30. The car would be here in 30 minutes. She showered, changed into jeans and a sweater, and packed a bag. Clothes for a week. Toiletries. Her phone charger. At the last minute, she grabbed a photo from her desk. Her whole family at Rico's high school graduation, all of them smiling. She needed to remember why she was doing this. At exactly 7 a.m., her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Car is downstairs. Black SUV. Driver's name is Marcus. Elena took one last look at her apartment. Her safe, small, simple life. After this week, nothing would be the same. She locked the door behind her and went downstairs. Oh, the black SUV was idling at the curb, looking completely out of place on her shabby street. Elena climbed into the back seat and found herself face to face with Margaret Chen. "Good morning," Margaret said crisply. She had a tablet in her lap and didn't look like she'd slept. "We have a lot to cover before we arrive." "Good morning to you too," Elena muttered. "First, the story. You and Daniel met 3 months ago at a charity event. You work in event planning. I'm his assistant. Not anymore. That looks too much like a power imbalance, which the press will crucify him for. You're an independent event planner. You met, you talked about his foundation work, you exchanged numbers. He called you the next day. You've been dating in secret ever since." Elena's head was already spinning. 3 months? But I just started working. Your assistant job was a cover so you could spend more time together without the press finding out. We'll leak some photos from the last few weeks, digitally altered to include you in the background of various locations Daniel visited. It'll look like you've been together this whole time. That's... Elena stopped. Is that legal? Manipulating photos for a fake relationship? Ethically questionable. Legally fine. Margaret swiped on her tablet. Second, your background. We're not hiding where you're from. Daniel's team has already drafted a narrative about you being a self-made woman from a working-class background. It plays well. The billionaire who fell for a regular girl. Very pretty woman. I haven't seen that movie. Margaret looked at her over the tablet. You should. It's basically your life now, minus the prostitution. Elena didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Third, the ring. Margaret pulled a small box from her purse and handed it to Elena. Put this on. Left hand, fourth finger. Elena opened the box and her jaw dropped. The ring was enormous. A diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires, set in platinum. It looked like it cost more than her entire life. I can't wear this, she said. What if I lose it? It's insured for $2 million. Wear it. Margaret's tone left no room for argument. Elena slipped the ring onto her finger. It was heavy, wrong, like wearing someone else's skin. Fourth, the family meeting. Daniel's father has requested a breakfast meeting at his estate. 9 a.m. You'll attend with Daniel. Do not engage with Richard Hayes unless spoken to directly. Do not answer personal questions. Do not show weakness. Great, no pressure. Elena. Margaret's voice softened slightly. Richard Hayes is a shark. He's built his empire by destroying anyone who gets in his way. He's going to try to break you, probably within the first 10 minutes. Are you prepared for that? Was she? Elena thought about growing up poor, about being the scholarship kid at a school full of rich children, about working 3 jobs to help pay for Rico's school. She'd been judged her whole life. What was one more rich asshole? I'm prepared, she said. Margaret studied her for a moment, then nodded. Good. Because if you fall apart in front of Richard, this whole thing collapses, and Daniel loses everything. The SUV pulled up to Daniel's building, a glass tower in Tribeca that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Marcus opened the door, and Elena stepped out onto the sidewalk. Cameras exploded in her face. Elena, over here! Miss Cruz, how long have you been seeing Daniel Hayes? Is it true you're pregnant? Did you know about Vanessa Hartwell? Elena froze. There were at least a dozen photographers shoving cameras and phones in her direction, shouting questions. Margaret grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the building entrance. No comment, Margaret said firmly. Miss Cruz will not be answering questions at this time. They pushed through the crowd. Someone grabbed Elena's other arm. She yanked away, her heart pounding. The doorman was holding the door open, and then they were inside, the glass cutting off the noise. Welcome to your new life, Margaret said dryly. Elena's hands were shaking. How did they know I'd be here? Someone always knows. Get used to it. Margaret headed toward the elevators. Come on, Daniel's waiting. The elevator was all mirrors and marble. Elena watched herself rise up through the building, 50 floors, 60, 70. When the doors opened, they stepped into a private hallway with only one door. Margaret knocked once and walked in. The penthouse was exactly what Elena had expected. Enormous windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture that looked uncomfortable, art on the walls that was probably worth more than her childhood home. But there were also signs of life. Toys scattered in one corner, a child's drawing stuck to the fridge with a magnet, a coffee mug on the counter with "World's Best Dad" written in crayon. Daniel was standing by the window, phone to his ear. He was wearing a suit, charcoal gray, perfect fit, but his tie was loose and his hair was messy. He looked like he hadn't slept. He saw her and said into the phone, "I'll call you back." He hung up and crossed the room. "Elena, are you okay? Margaret said there were photographers downstairs." "I'm fine." She wasn't, but that didn't matter. "Your lawyer filled me in on the story and the meeting with your father." Something dark crossed his face. "About that?" "You don't have to go if you don't want to. I can make an excuse. I'll go." Elena lifted her chin. "We have a deal. I'm not backing out after one day." Daniel studied her. "He's going to be cruel to you." "I've dealt with cruel before." "Not like this." "Then I guess I'll learn." A small voice came from behind them. "Daddy?" Elena turned. A little boy stood in the hallway, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. He had Daniel's dark hair and hazel eyes, but his face was softer, sweet. He was wearing Superman pajamas. "Hey, buddy." Daniel's whole demeanor changed. He knelt down. "What are you doing up? Marie's supposed to be getting you breakfast." "I heard talking." Liam's eyes fixed on Elena. "Who's that?" Daniel hesitated. Elena could see him trying to figure out how to explain this to a 4-year-old. Before he could speak, Elena knelt down too, putting herself at Liam's level. "Hi," she said. "I'm Elena. She glanced at Daniel. "I'm your dad's friend." Liam considered this. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I don't know much about them," Elena admitted, "but I'd like to learn." Liam's face lit up. "I have 17 dinosaurs. Want to see?" "Liam," Daniel said gently, "Elena and I have to go to a meeting soon. Maybe later?" "Oh." Liam's face fell. Elena made a decision. She looked at her watch. They had 30 minutes before they needed to leave. "I can see them now, if that's okay with your dad." Daniel looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yeah." Elena smiled at Liam. "Show me your dinosaurs." Liam grabbed her hand and pulled her down the hall. His room was chaos, toys everywhere, drawings taped to the walls, a bed shaped like a race car. But it was lived in, loved, real. For the next 20 minutes, Elena sat on the floor while Liam showed her every single dinosaur and told her their names and what they ate and which ones were the best fighters. She didn't know anything about dinosaurs, but she knew about kids. She'd babysat for years to make extra money, so she listened and asked questions and made him laugh. When she finally left the room, Daniel was standing in the hallway. He had a strange expression on his face. "What?" Elena asked. "Nothing. Just, most people aren't patient with him. They think because I have money he should be perfect. But he's just a kid." "He's a good kid," Elena said. "You're doing something right." Daniel's expression shifted into something she couldn't read. Before he could respond, Margaret appeared with 2 coffee cups. "Time to go," she said. "Richard Hayes waits for no one, not even his own son." Nah. Richard Hayes's estate was in Greenwich, Connecticut. It took an hour to drive there, through increasingly wealthy neighborhoods, until they finally turned onto a private road lined with massive trees. The house, mansion really, looked like something from a movie. Stone and glass, sprawling grounds, a fountain in the circular driveway. A maid opened the door before they even knocked. "Mr. Hayes is expecting you in the dining room," she said quietly. Elena followed Daniel through a hallway lined with portraits. She recognized some of the faces, Hayes family members going back generations. Old money, power. She did not belong here. The dining room was enormous, with a table that could seat 20. Richard Hayes sat at the head reading a newspaper. He didn't look up when they entered. You're late, he said. We're 5 minutes early, Daniel replied. Then I've been waiting for 5 minutes. Richard finally lowered the paper, his eyes fixed on Elena. So this is the girl. Elena forced herself not to look away. Elena Cruz. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Hayes. I doubt that. Richard gestured to chairs. Sit. They sat. A server appeared immediately with coffee, juice, a basket of pastries that looked too perfect to eat. Elena's stomach was churning. She picked up her coffee just to have something to do with her hands. Tell me, Miss Cruz. Richard's voice was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. How much is my son paying you? Dad, Daniel started. I'm speaking to your fiancé, not you. Richard didn't look away from Elena. It's a simple question. How much? Elena set down her coffee cup carefully. I'm not sure what you mean. Of course you are. You're a smart girl. I've already had you investigated. Grew up poor in Queens, worked multiple jobs, barely scraped through community college. Now suddenly you're engaged to a billionaire. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. So I'll ask again. How much is he paying you to play this role? The room was silent. Elena felt Daniel tense beside her, but she didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on Richard. This was the test. She could feel it. If she cracked now, showed anger or fear or weakness, Richard would use it. He'd tear her apart and this whole thing would fall apart before it even began. So instead, she smiled. You know what's interesting, Mr. Hayes? She leaned back in her chair, trying to look relaxed even though her heart was pounding. Everyone assumes that someone like me must be after money, that I couldn't possibly have anything else to offer your son. She paused. But maybe that says more about how you think than how I live. Richard's expression didn't change, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. Interest, maybe, or calculation. You have a spine, he said. That's unexpected. I've had to develop one. Clearly, Richard picked up his fork. Unfortunately, spine is not enough to survive this world. You're out of your depth, Miss Cruz. My son needs a wife who understands power, who can navigate society, who comes from the right background. You're none of those things. You're right, Elena said. I'm not from the right background. But I think Daniel's already had enough of the right background. How did that work out for him? The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Daniel made a small sound, maybe a warning, maybe surprise. Richard's eyes went flat and dangerous. Careful, girl. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, Elena said, even though they both knew she was. I'm just saying, Daniel's an adult. He can make his own choices about who he wants to be with. And right now, he's choosing me. For now, Richard set down his fork. But how long do you think this will last? A month? 6 months? Eventually the novelty will wear off. You'll realize you have nothing in common. You'll get tired of the pressure, the scrutiny, the constant judgment. And when you leave, and you will leave, you'll take a settlement and disappear. That's how this story ends. He was trying to get under her skin. Elena knew that, but he was also saying things that she'd thought herself, late at night when she couldn't sleep. Things that felt true. Maybe, she said quietly. Or maybe you're wrong. I'm rarely wrong. There's a first time for everything. Richard studied her for a long moment. Then he laughed, a short, sharp sound. You're either very brave or very stupid. I haven't decided which. Can I be both? This time his laugh was almost genuine. He turned to Daniel. All right, I'll play along with this charade for now, but understand this, both of you. I will not allow this company to be damaged by your impulsiveness. If this relationship becomes a liability, if it affects stock prices, if it damages our reputation, if it gives the board any reason to question Daniel's judgment, I will end it. Is that clear? Crystal, Daniel said. His voice was tight with controlled anger. Good. Richard returned to his breakfast. Now, let's discuss the press conference. We'll need to control the narrative before it spirals further out of control. The rest of the breakfast was a blur of strategic planning. Margaret took notes. Daniel argued with his father about messaging. Elena sat quietly, trying to memorize everything they were saying about her fake relationship, her fake love story, her fake life. By the time they left, her head was pounding. You did well, Daniel said in the car. Better than I expected, honestly. He's terrifying, Elena said. Yeah, he is. Daniel looked out the window. But you stood up to him. Most people can't do that. Most people aren't desperate enough. Elena closed her eyes. What's next? Press conference at noon. We'll make a joint statement, answer a few questions, show a united front. He paused. And then tonight, there's a charity gala. Black tie. We need to be seen together in public, looking happy. Elena groaned. I don't have anything to wear to a gala. Already handled. There's a stylist coming to the apartment at 2. She'll have options. Of course there was a stylist. Of course everything was already handled. This was Daniel's world, where problems got solved with money and logistics. Elena thought about her apartment, her real life, waiting for her on the other side of this week. It felt very far away. 6 more days, she said softly. 6 more days, Daniel agreed. Neither of them sounded very convinced. The press conference was scheduled in the main conference room at Hayes Technologies headquarters. Elena stood backstage, if you could call it that, really just a hallway behind a curtain, watching technicians adjust lights and test microphones. Her new dress was navy blue, conservative but expensive, chosen by a stylist named Petra, who'd brought 12 options and dismissed Elena's protests about cost with a wave of her hand. Mr. Hayes's account, Petra had said, like that explained everything. Maybe it did. The ring felt wrong on her finger. Elena kept touching it, twisting it, trying to make it feel less like a shackle. Through the curtain, she could hear the murmur of reporters gathering. A lot of them. Stop fidgeting. Margaret appeared at her elbow, phone in one hand, tablet in the other. You look nervous. I am nervous. Don't be. We've prepared for every possible question. Just stick to the script. Margaret's eyes flicked to Elena's hand. And stop touching the ring. It makes you look guilty. Elena dropped her hand. What if someone asks something we didn't prepare for? Then you smile and defer to Daniel. You're the shy fiancé, remember? Overwhelmed by all the attention. Let him do the talking. Margaret checked her watch. 5 minutes. Where is he? As if summoned, Daniel pushed through the backstage door. He looked pulled together now, hair combed, tie straight, the mask of the CEO firmly in place. But Elena had spent enough time reading people to see the tension in his shoulders. Ready? He asked. No, Elena said honestly. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. Yeah, me neither. He held out his hand. But we do it anyway. Elena looked at his hand. She thought about the contract, the money already sitting in her account, her mother's surgery scheduled for next week, 6 more days. She could pretend for 6 more days. She took his hand. His palm was warm, slightly rough. She wondered if he was the kind of CEO who actually did things with his hands, or if it was from something else. Holding his son, maybe. The thought made her chest tight. Margaret nodded to someone. Music started playing, something classical and boring. The curtain pulled back and suddenly they were walking onto a small stage, hand in hand, lights so bright Elena couldn't see the reporters' faces. Just the cameras. Dozens of them. Daniel squeezed her hand once. A warning or reassurance, she wasn't sure which. They sat in 2 chairs behind a long table, microphones everywhere. Elena's heart was hammering so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Good afternoon. Daniel's voice was calm, professional. Thank you all for coming. I know there's been a lot of speculation over the past 24 hours, so Elena and I wanted to address the situation directly. A reporter shouted a question immediately. Daniel held up a hand. We'll take questions in a moment. First, I want to clarify a few things. Yes, Elena Cruz and I are engaged. We've been in a relationship for 3 months, though we kept it private to protect both her privacy and my son's well-being. The announcement at the gala was not planned. He paused, and Elena saw something genuine flash across his face. Regret, maybe. I handled that poorly. I should have been more thoughtful about how the news came out. But the relationship itself is real, and I'm grateful that Elena has agreed to marry me. He turned to look at her. The expression on his face was soft, almost tender. Elena knew it was acting, but it looked so real that for a second she almost believed it herself. Elena? Margaret had coached her on this part. Keep it brief, keep it sweet, don't say anything that could be twisted. Elena leaned toward the microphone. Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. I'm very happy. Daniel is... She swallowed. What was he? Her boss? Her ticket out of poverty, a stranger who dragged her into a nightmare. He's a good man. I'm lucky. The words tasted like lies. Questions? Daniel said. Chaos erupted, reporters shouting over each other, hands waving. Daniel pointed to a woman in the front row. Rebecca Chen, Wall Street Journal. Mr. Hayes, your father has publicly stated he was unaware of this relationship. Does he support the engagement? My father and I have different opinions on many things, Daniel said smoothly. But family is important to both of us. We're working through this together. Translation. No, he doesn't support it, but we're pretending to be civil. Elena was learning the language of corporate doublespeak. Another reporter. Miss Cruz, where did you two meet? Elena's mind went blank. What had Margaret said? Charity event? 3 months ago. She opened her mouth, but Daniel cut in smoothly. A Literacy Foundation event in September. Elena was working with the organizers, and we started talking about education access. I was impressed by her passion. He looked at her again with that soft expression. Still am. The lie rolled off his tongue so easily. Elena wondered how many times he'd had to lie for business, for his father, for survival in this world. How did you propose? Someone shouted. This one they'd prepared. Daniel smiled. Nothing fancy. We were having dinner at her apartment. Elena's an excellent cook, and I just knew I didn't want to spend another day without making this official. More lies. Elena had never cooked for him. She'd barely spoken to him before yesterday, but the reporters were eating it up, scribbling notes, recording everything. Miss Cruz, are you aware of the prenuptial agreement? Elena froze. They hadn't discussed this. She looked at Daniel. There will be no prenup, Daniel said firmly. Elena and I are building a partnership based on trust, not contracts. Margaret's head snapped up from her tablet. Even she hadn't known about that decision, apparently. Elena saw several reporters lean forward, sensing something significant. That's unusual for someone with your net worth, Rebecca Chen said carefully. Are you concerned about the financial implications? I'm concerned about starting a marriage by planning for its failure, Daniel replied. Next question. Someone asked about Vanessa Hartwell. Daniel's expression went cold. That was an arrangement made by my father without my full consent. I should have ended it sooner. I regret any pain caused to Miss Hartwell, but the engagement was never valid from my perspective. So you were cheating on her with Miss Cruz? There's no cheating when you never agreed to the relationship in the first place. Daniel's voice had an edge now. Next, the questions kept coming about Elena's background, about Liam, about the company's stock price, which had apparently dropped 3% since yesterday, about whether this was a publicity stunt. Elena sat there trying to look calm while her world spun. Every answer Daniel gave was another lie she'd have to remember, another piece of the fake history they were building. Finally, Margaret stood up. That's all the time we have. Thank you all for coming. The reporters exploded with more questions, but Daniel was already standing, his hand on Elena's elbow, guiding her backstage. As soon as the curtain closed behind them, he dropped her arm. No prenup? Margaret rounded on him. Daniel, that's insane. Do you know what that implies legally? I know exactly what it implies. Daniel's jaw was tight. And I meant it. When this is over and we stage the breakup, Elena gets a settlement, a real one. She's earned it. Margaret looked between them. You're going to give her actual money after a fake 1-week engagement? Yes? That's going to raise questions? People will wonder why. Let them wonder. Daniel turned to Elena. You okay? She wasn't. She felt sick. The lies, the cameras, the weight of all those eyes judging her. I need air. Roof access is through that door, Margaret pointed. But be careful. If any photographers have drones... Elena was already walking away. She found the door, climbed 2 flights of stairs, and pushed out onto the roof. The cold air hit her face like a slap. Manhattan stretched out in every direction, all glass and steel and money. She walked to the edge and gripped the railing. Her hands were shaking. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn around. Sorry, Daniel's voice said. I can leave if you want. It's your building. Elena kept staring at the city. I'm the one who doesn't belong here. Silence. Then footsteps. Daniel leaned on the railing beside her, careful to keep a few feet of distance between them. That wasn't fair. he said. What I did to you yesterday? Dragging you into this without warning. No, it wasn't. For what it's worth, I am sorry. I panicked, and I didn't think about how it would affect you. That was selfish. Elena finally looked at him. Up close, she could see he had dark circles under his eyes. Did you sleep last night? No, Liam had nightmares. He usually does when there's change. Daniel rubbed his face. He kept asking about you, about the lady with the nice smile who liked his dinosaurs. Something twisted in Elena's chest. He's a sweet kid. Yeah, he is. Daniel's voice was soft. His mother died when he was born. Complications during delivery. I was 28, running a company, and suddenly I had this tiny human depending on me for everything. He laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. My father wanted to send him away to boarding school, said I couldn't run a business and raise a child, that I needed to focus on what mattered. But you didn't. No. Because Liam is what matters. The company, the money, all of this. He gestured at the skyline. It doesn't mean anything if I lose him. He turned to face her. That's why I need to break free from my father's control. Not for me, for Liam. So he can grow up without someone manipulating every aspect of his life. Elena understood then. This wasn't just about corporate power or arranged marriages. It was about a father protecting his son. She thought about her own father, working 70-hour weeks so she and Rico could have better lives. Different circumstances, same desperate love. 6 more days, she said quietly. 6 more days, Daniel agreed. And then you're free. You can go back to your real life and forget this ever happened. Could she, though? Elena looked down at the ring on her finger, at the city spread below them, at the man standing next to her who'd turned her entire existence upside down in less than 48 hours. I don't think I'll ever forget this, she said. Daniel studied her face. For a moment she thought he might say something else, but Margaret's voice crackled through his phone. Daniel, the board wants an emergency meeting. They're concerned about the stock drop. He sighed and pulled out his phone. On my way. To Elena. The stylist should be at the apartment by now. Tonight's gala is important. Lot of major donors, lot of cameras. We need to look united. Right. United. Elena pushed off the railing. I'll be ready. They went back inside. The afternoon blurred into preparation. The stylist had brought 6 dresses, all of them beautiful and terrifying. Elena chose a deep green one because Petra said it brought out her eyes, whatever that meant. Makeup artist, hairstylist, someone to teach her how to walk in heels that cost more than her monthly rent. By the time the car arrived at 7, Elena barely recognized herself in the mirror. She looked expensive, polished, like someone who belonged on a billionaire's arm. It was the best costume she'd ever worn. The gala was at the Plaza Hotel, because of course it was. Red carpet, actual celebrities, more cameras than the press conference. Daniel met her at the car, looking sharp in a tuxedo. He offered his arm without a word, and Elena took it, trying to remember everything Margaret had coached her on. Smile, but don't grin. Make eye contact, but don't stare. Touch him casually, hand on arm, lean in close when he speaks, but don't overdo it. You look beautiful, Daniel said quietly as they approached the entrance. It's the dress. Elena's throat was tight. No, it's not. Before she could respond, they were in the lights, cameras flashing, people shouting their names. Elena plastered on a smile and let Daniel guide her down the carpet. They posed for photos, his arm around her waist, her hand on his chest, both of them looking at each other like they were actually in love. This is insane, Elena whispered through her smile. Welcome to my life, Daniel whispered back. Inside was even worse. Everyone wanted to meet her, to shake her hand, to kiss her cheek, to ask her probing questions disguised as small talk. Elena smiled until her face hurt and let Daniel do most of the talking. You're handling this well, a woman said. She was maybe 50, dripping in jewelry, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Most girls would be overwhelmed. It's definitely different from what I'm used to, Elena said carefully. I'm sure it is. The woman's eyes raked over her. Where did you say you went to school? I didn't. Oh. A loaded pause. Well, how nice that Daniel is so open-minded about education. It took Elena a second to realize she'd just been insulted. Before she could respond, Daniel's hand tightened on her waist. Elena's intelligence has nothing to do with which schools she could afford, he said coolly, and I'd appreciate it if our guests focused on the charity work we're here to support rather than my fiancé's resume. The woman's smile went brittle. Of course. My apologies. She drifted away. Elena let out a breath. That's going to happen all night, Daniel warned. They're testing you, trying to figure out if you're worthy. And if I'm not, then they'll eat you alive. He steered her toward the bar. Which is why you're going to stay close to me, smile a lot, and let me handle anyone who gets aggressive. A waiter appeared with champagne. Elena took a glass and drank half of it immediately. The bubbles burned her throat. Easy, Daniel said. You need to stay sharp. I need to not panic. Elena finished the glass and grabbed another one. How do you do this? All the time? The fakeness? Practice. Daniel's expression was unreadable. And remembering that it's all a game. None of it's real. But it felt real. The judgment in people's eyes felt real. The whispers that followed them across the room felt real. The way women looked at Elena like she'd stolen something that belonged to them felt real. She downed the second glass of champagne. The room was starting to blur at the edges. Elena, Daniel's voice had a warning in it. I'm fine. She wasn't fine. She was trapped in a beautiful nightmare, wearing a stranger's jewelry, pretending to love a man she barely knew, surrounded by people who hated her for existing. The champagne helped. She grabbed a third glass. Seriously, slow down. Don't tell me what to do. The words came out sharper than Elena intended. You don't get to drag me into this and then tell me how to survive it. Daniel's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, someone called his name. A board member, Margaret had said. Important donor. Daniel forced a smile and turned to shake the man's hand. Elena drifted away while they talked. The room was spinning pleasantly now. She found herself near a group of women about her age, all of them in designer dresses, all of them watching her with barely concealed hostility. So you're the one, a blonde said. Her smile was vicious. The assistant who landed the billionaire. I'm not... Elena stopped. Right, she was supposed to be an event planner. I mean, yes, I'm Elena. How nice for you. Another woman, brunette with perfect skin. Tell me, did you always know Daniel was engaged when you started sleeping with him, or was that a fun surprise? Elena's face went hot. It's not like that. Of course it's not. The blonde laughed. It never is. Women like you always have excuses. Women like me. Gold diggers, social climbers, whatever you want to call it. The blonde's eyes were cold. You think you're the first girl from nowhere who tried to trap a rich man? Please. You'll be gone in 6 months, and he'll move on to the next one. Elena opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Because maybe they were right. Maybe that's exactly what she was. A girl from nowhere, taking money to play a part. No different from what they were accusing her of, except she knew the truth. Leave her alone, Brittany. A new voice. Elena turned to see a woman in her 40s, red hair, kind eyes. You're being cruel. I'm being honest, Brittany said. You're being jealous. The redhead smiled at Elena. I'm Catherine, and I apologize for these vultures. They're upset because they all wanted Daniel for themselves. Or for their daughters, the brunette muttered. Catherine rolled her eyes. Come on, let's get you some air. She linked her arm through Elena's and steered her toward a balcony. The cold air felt good on Elena's overheated skin. The champagne buzz was fading, leaving just a headache. Thank you, Elena said. Don't mention it. High society can be vicious, especially to outsiders. Catherine leaned on the balcony railing. For what it's worth, I think Daniel chose well. You stood up to his father this morning. I heard about it through the grapevine. That takes guts. Elena looked at her. You know Richard Hayes? Unfortunately. He tried to force my company into a merger 3 years ago. I refused, and he spent 6 months trying to destroy me. Catherine's smile was sharp. He failed, but it was ugly. How did you survive it? By being smarter and more stubborn than he expected. Catherine studied Elena's face. You're going to need both of those things. Richard doesn't give up easily. I'm starting to realize that. They stood in silence for a moment. Inside, Elena could see Daniel through the glass doors, still talking to the board member. He looked tired. She wondered if he was as sick of this charade as she was. Can I give you some advice? Catherine asked. Please, don't try to be what they want you to be. These people, she gestured at the gala, they'll never fully accept you no matter what you do. So stop trying. Be yourself. It'll piss them off more, but at least you'll survive with your dignity intact. Be yourself. Elena almost laughed. She didn't even know who that was anymore. Was she the girl from Queens trying to help her family? The fake fiancé pretending to be in love? The woman in the expensive dress who'd downed 3 glasses of champagne because she couldn't handle the pressure? What if myself isn't enough? Elena asked quietly. Then Daniel's not worth it. Catherine's voice was firm. And between you and me, I think he knows how lucky he is to have found you. I saw the way he looked at you when you walked in. That wasn't acting. Elena's heart did something complicated. You're wrong. Maybe, but I've been watching Daniel Hayes for years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Catherine pushed off the railing. Come on, let's get you some coffee before you have to face the wolves again. They went back inside. Daniel found Elena immediately, his expression relieved. There you are, I thought. He stopped. Are you okay? I'm fine, just needed air. Elena glanced at Catherine. Catherine was keeping me company. Catherine, Daniel's tone warmed. Thank you for looking out for her. Any time. Catherine squeezed Elena's arm once and drifted away. Daniel guided Elena to a quiet corner. What happened? Did someone say something? Just the usual. Gold digger, social climber, all that. Elena tried to sound casual. Nothing I can't handle. Elena. I said, I'm fine. She wasn't. But she was also 3 glasses of champagne in and trying very hard not to cry in front of 300 people. How much longer do we have to stay? Daniel checked his watch. Another hour. We need to be seen, especially with the board members. He hesitated. But if you really can't, I can. Elena straightened her spine. Let's just get this over with. The next hour was torture. More introductions, more fake smiles, more thinly veiled insults disguised as curiosity. Elena's feet hurt from the heels. Her face hurt from smiling. Her chest hurt from holding in everything she wanted to scream. Finally, blessedly, they said their goodbyes and headed to the car. Elena collapsed into the back seat with a groan. I hate rich people, she said. Daniel laughed, a real laugh this time. Yeah, me too sometimes. You are rich people. Doesn't mean I have to like them. He loosened his tie. You did well tonight. Better than well, actually. Several board members told me they were impressed. Great. I'm so glad I impress people who think I'm a prostitute. Nobody thinks that. Brittany and her friends definitely think that. Elena kicked off her heels. They called me a gold digger to my face. Daniel's expression darkened. Who? Doesn't matter, it's fine. It's not fine, I'll have Margaret. Don't. Elena closed her eyes. It doesn't matter what they think. In 6 days, none of this will matter anyway. Silence filled the car. Elena felt the champagne buzz fading completely now, leaving just exhaustion and a bone-deep ache. 4 more days, Daniel said quietly. Elena's eyes flew open. What? We've done 3 days. Only 4 left. He was looking at her with an odd expression. You're halfway done. 4 more days. 4 more days of this hell, and then Elena could go home. Back to her real life, her real problems, her real self. Except she wasn't sure who that was anymore. When they got back to the penthouse, Liam was still awake. He came running into the hallway in his pajamas, clutching his dinosaur. Daddy! Elena! He launched himself at Daniel's legs. Did you have fun at the party? Daniel scooped him up. Not really, but seeing you makes it better. Elena looks like a princess, Liam said seriously. Elena felt something crack in her chest. Thank you, Liam. Can you read me a story, please? Liam, Elena's tired, Daniel started. It's okay. Elena found herself saying, I can read one story. Liam's face lit up. Daniel looked surprised, but handed him over. Liam was warm and solid in Elena's arms, smelling like kid shampoo and sleep. They went to his room. Elena sat on the edge of the race car bed while Liam picked out a book about dinosaurs saving the world. She read it slowly, doing different voices for each character. Liam giggled at her T-Rex impression. By the end of the story, his eyes were drooping. Elena tucked the blanket around him. Elena. His voice was sleepy. Yeah? Are you going to marry my daddy? Elena's throat closed. That's the plan. Good. I like you. He yawned. You're nice. You're nice too, kiddo. Liam's eyes fluttered closed. Within seconds, he was asleep. Elena sat there for a moment, looking at his peaceful face, and felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. This was the problem with lies. Sometimes they started feeling like truth. She stood up carefully and found Daniel waiting in the hallway. He looked at her strangely. What? Elena asked. Nothing. Just thank you for being kind to him. He's easy to be kind to. Elena walked past him toward the guest room. Good night, Daniel. Elena, wait. She stopped, turned. Daniel seemed to be struggling with something. Finally, he said, when this is over, after the week, if you ever need anything, a job reference, help with something, anything, you can call me. I mean that. Why? Because you didn't have to be nice to my son. You didn't have to handle tonight with grace. You didn't have to do any of this well, but you did. He ran a hand through his hair. And I'm starting to think maybe I don't deserve the help you're giving me. Elena didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and went to her room. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rico. How you holding up? Surviving, barely. Mom's surgery is Tuesday. She's nervous but excited. Elena closed her eyes. Tuesday. 5 more days. She could do 5 more days. Tell her I love her. She knows. She loves you too. We all do. Elena set the phone down and let herself cry. Just for a minute, just to release the pressure before it crushed her completely. Tomorrow there would be more cameras, more lies, more people judging her for sins she hadn't committed. But her mother would get the surgery. Her family would be okay. That had to be enough. It had to be. The phone call came at 6 in the morning. Elena was already awake, staring at the ceiling in the guest room when her phone lit up. Margaret's name flashed on the screen. Nothing good ever came from calls this early. Hello? Turn on the news? Margaret's voice was clipped. Channel 7, now. Elena fumbled for the remote on the nightstand. The TV flickered to life and her stomach dropped straight through the floor. Her face filled the screen. Not the polished version from the gala. This was a photo from years ago, outside the community center in Queens where she'd volunteered. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, she was wearing a stained t-shirt, and she looked exhausted. The caption read, From Food Stamps to Fortune, the real story of Elena Cruz. Oh no, Elena whispered. The anchor's voice was bright and cruel. New documents obtained exclusively by Channel 7 show that Elena Cruz, fiancée of Billionaire CEO Daniel Hayes, grew up in extreme poverty. Records indicate her family received government assistance for over a decade. Sources close to the Hayes family are questioning whether this relationship is genuine or simply an opportunistic. Elena turned it off. Her hands were shaking. The phone rang again. Daniel this time. Don't watch the news, he said immediately. Too late. I'm sorry. My father, he must have leaked your records. Margaret's already on it. She's threatening legal action. It doesn't matter. Elena's voice sounded hollow. It's all true. We did get food stamps. We did struggle. They're not making anything up. That's not the point. Your privacy. I don't have privacy anymore. Elena stood up and walked to the window. Down below, she could see a news van parking across the street. How bad is it going to get? Silence. That was answer enough. There's more, Daniel said quietly. Vanessa Hartwell is giving an interview this afternoon. Her publicist says she's going to tell her side of the story. Of course she was. Elena pressed her forehead against the cool glass. What do we do? We ignore it, we stick to our story, and we ignore everything else. For how much longer? Elena's voice cracked. How much longer can we keep this up? 3 more days, Daniel said. Just 3 more days, and then it's over. 3 more days felt like a lifetime. Elena got dressed in jeans and a sweater, her own clothes, not the expensive things Petra had chosen. She needed to feel like herself today. When she emerged from the guest room, she found Daniel in the kitchen making coffee. He looked as rough as she felt. Morning, he said. Is it? Elena collapsed into a chair at the kitchen island. Feels more like a nightmare. Daniel poured her a cup of coffee. Margaret wants us to do another statement. Address the leaked information directly. Control the narrative. I'm tired of narratives. Elena wrapped her hands around the mug. I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when the whole world is tearing me apart. I know. Daniel sat down across from her. For what it's worth, I meant what I said. My father crossed a line. What he did was cruel, and I'm going to make sure. Don't. Elena looked at him. Don't make promises about what you're going to do to him. He's your father, and this whole thing was my choice. I knew the risks. You didn't know he'd weaponize your childhood. I should have guessed. Elena took a sip of coffee. It was strong and bitter. Rich people always use poverty as a weapon. Footsteps on the stairs. Liam appeared in his dinosaur pajamas, dragging his stuffed T-Rex behind him. He climbed into Daniel's lap without a word. Bad dream? Daniel asked softly. Liam nodded against his chest. There were loud voices. They woke me up. Daniel and Elena exchanged a glance. The news. Liam had probably heard the TV. It's okay now, Daniel said. Just the news being noisy. Nothing to worry about. Is Elena in trouble? Liam's voice was muffled. Elena's heart clenched. No, buddy, I'm not in trouble. Then why were they saying mean things about you? Out of the mouths of children. Elena didn't know how to answer that. Daniel beat her to it. Sometimes people say mean things because they don't understand the whole story, he told his son. But Elena didn't do anything wrong. The people on TV just like to gossip. Gossip is bad, Liam said with the certainty of a 4-year-old who'd been taught a rule. Very bad, Daniel agreed. Liam finally looked at Elena. I don't care if you were poor. You're still nice. Something broke open in Elena's chest. She had to look away before the tears came. Thank you, Liam. That means a lot. Can we have pancakes? The change of subject was so abrupt that Elena almost laughed. Almost. Daniel did laugh, soft and tired. Yeah, buddy, we can have pancakes. Elena stood up. I'll make them. You don't have to. I want to. She needed something to do with her hands, something normal, something that wasn't about cameras or lies or her childhood being broadcast on national television. She found ingredients in the expensive kitchen and started mixing batter. Liam pulled a chair over to watch, narrating everything she did. Daniel made more coffee and answered emails on his phone, one hand always on his son's back. It felt almost domestic, almost real. Elena flipped a pancake and thought about her own kitchen in Queens. The ancient stove that only 2 burners worked on. The crack in the countertop her father kept meaning to fix. The window that looked out at a brick wall. This kitchen had windows overlooking Central Park. Elena? Liam's voice pulled her back. Yeah? When you marry Daddy, will you live here always? The spatula slipped from Elena's hand. She caught it before it hit the floor. Liam, we talked about this, Daniel said gently. Elena and I haven't figured out all the details yet. But she'll be my mom, right? The room went very quiet. Elena stared at the pancakes, willing herself not to cry. Daniel's face had gone pale. Buddy, Daniel's voice was careful. Elena will be your stepmom. That's a little different. But she'll stay? Elena couldn't do this. She couldn't stand here and lie to a 4-year-old about being his mother when in 3 days she was going to disappear from his life forever. She set down the spatula and turned around. Liam, Her voice failed. How did you explain to a child that everything was fake? That the nice lady who made him pancakes and read him stories was just playing pretend for money? Daniel stood up, Liam still in his arms. Hey, why don't you go pick out what you want to wear today, the blue shirt or the red one? Blue, Liam said immediately. Good choice. Go get it, and I'll help you get dressed after breakfast. Liam scrambled down and ran off. The second he was gone, Daniel turned to Elena. I'm sorry, he doesn't understand. He thinks I'm going to be his mother. Elena's voice shook. Daniel, what are we going to tell him when I leave? The truth. That sometimes relationships don't work out. He's 4. He's going to think it's his fault. Then I'll make sure he knows it's not. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Elena, I know this is complicated, but Liam's been through worse. He'll be okay. Will he? Elena turned back to the stove. The pancakes were burning. She flipped them anyway. Or are we just telling ourselves that so we can sleep at night? Daniel didn't answer. They ate breakfast in tense silence. Liam chattered about dinosaurs and didn't notice the adults barely touching their food. After, Daniel took him to get dressed while Elena cleaned up. Her phone kept buzzing with texts she didn't want to read. Margaret arrived at 8:30 with a tablet full of headlines. They were all brutal. Gold digger or true love? The Elena Cruz story. Billionaire's new fiancé has history of financial struggle. Hayes family sources. Question engagement motives. I've drafted 3 different responses, Margaret said, swiping through documents. Option 1 is aggressive. We threaten legal action against anyone who continues to invade Elena's privacy. Option 2 is sympathetic. We lean into the Cinderella narrative, make this a story about love conquering class divides. Option 3 is no. Elena cut her off. No more responses, no more statements. Margaret looked up sharply. Elena, we need to control this before it spirals. It's already spiraling. Nothing we say is going to make them stop. Elena stood up. I need to go home. What? To Queens, to see my family. My mother's surgery is Tuesday, and I need to be there before... She stopped. Before everything got worse, before Vanessa's interview aired, before the walls closed in completely. That's a terrible idea, Margaret said flatly. The press will follow you. They'll harass your family. They're probably already doing that. Then you going there will make it worse. I don't care. Elena's voice was firm. I've spent 4 days pretending to be someone I'm not. I need a few hours to remember who I actually am. Daniel appeared in the doorway. I'll go with you. No. Elena, no. She looked at him. This is my family, my neighborhood. You showing up in your expensive car will just make everything harder. He's right, though, Margaret interjected. You can't go alone. The optics. I don't care about optics, Elena's voice rose. For once in the past 4 days, I don't care what something looks like. I'm going home and you can't stop me. She grabbed her purse and walked out. The subway felt like returning to reality after living in a dream, or a nightmare. Elena sat in a corner seat, hood pulled up, and watched the familiar stations pass. Nobody recognized her down here. Just another girl riding the train. Her phone buzzed. Daniel, at least let Marcus drive you back. Please. Elena stared at the text. It was a reasonable request. She typed back, Fine. I'll call when I'm ready. The train pulled into her stop. Elena climbed the stairs to street level, and her heart sank. There were news vans parked on her parents' block, at least 3 of them. She pulled her hood lower and walked quickly. A reporter spotted her anyway. Elena Cruz, can we get a statement? She ignored them and kept walking. The reporter followed. Is it true your family was on government assistance? How does Daniel Hayes feel about your financial background? Elena's hands curled into fists, but she didn't stop. Her parents' building came into view, a run-down brownstone that should have been condemned years ago. More reporters on the stoop. She pushed through them. No comment, she said firmly. Leave my family alone. Just one question. Elena slammed the door behind her and leaned against it, breathing hard. Her mother appeared at the top of the stairs. Mija! She rushed down and pulled Elena into a hug. I saw the news. Those people, they're saying terrible things. It's okay, Mama. Elena hugged her back tight. Don't listen to them. But they said you were poor, like it was shameful, like we should be ashamed. I'm not ashamed. Elena pulled back to look at her mother's face. Are you? Of course not. We worked hard. We survived. Her mother's eyes filled with tears. But they make it sound like you're only with this man for money. Elena's throat closed, because wasn't that exactly what she was doing? Taking money to pretend to be in love? It's complicated, Mama. Is he good to you? This Daniel. Elena thought about Daniel making coffee in the morning, reading to Liam at night, the way he'd stood up to his father to protect his son, the quiet moments on the roof when he'd looked almost human. Yes, he's good to me. It wasn't entirely a lie. Her father came into the hallway, still in his work clothes, even though it was Sunday. He looked tired, older than Elena remembered. Those reporters, he said, they've been here since dawn, asking questions about you, about our family. One of them tried to go through our trash. I'm sorry, Papa. Don't apologize. He pulled her into a hug that smelled like motor oil and Old Spice. Safe. Home. You didn't do anything wrong. They're the ones who should apologize, digging into our lives like we're criminals. Rico emerged from the kitchen. The circus is here, I see. Shut up, Elena said, but she was smiling. They went into the small living room. Elena's mother made tea that nobody drank. They sat in the worn furniture that Elena had grown up with, and nobody mentioned the elephant in the room for a full 5 minutes. Finally, Rico broke. So are you going to tell us what's really going on? Elena looked at her family. Her mother, still recovering from the heart condition that would have killed her without the surgery Elena's deal had paid for. Her father, hands scarred from decades of hard labor. Her brother, who'd given up his education so the family could survive. She'd made this deal for them. But sitting here in their tiny living room with reporters camped outside, she wondered if the cost was too high. It's exactly what it looks like, she said quietly. Daniel and I are engaged. But you barely know him, her mother protested. 3 months, the news said. That's so fast. When you know, you know. The lie tasted bitter. Rico was watching her with narrow eyes. He knew the truth. He could blow everything open right now if he wanted to. Instead, he said, "And you're happy? Was she?" Elena thought about the past 4 days, the terror and the lies and the constant scrutiny, but also Liam's smile, Daniel's rare moments of honesty, the way Catherine had defended her at the gala. "I'm surviving," she said, which was the most honest thing she'd said all week. Her phone buzzed, a news alert. Vanessa Hartwell's interview was starting in 30 minutes. "I need to watch something," Elena said. "Can I use your TV?" They gathered around the old television in the living room. Elena turned it on just as Vanessa's face filled the screen. She looked perfect. Blonde hair styled, makeup flawless, wearing white like a martyr. The interviewer's voice was syrupy. "Thank you for sitting down with us, Vanessa. I know this must be difficult." "It's been the hardest week of my life," Vanessa said. Her voice trembled. "I thought Daniel and I were building a future together. Our families had been planning this union for years. And then out of nowhere, he humiliates me in front of everyone by kissing some woman I'd never even heard of." "You had no idea he was seeing Elena Cruz?" "None. I thought we were happy." Vanessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Looking back, there were signs. He'd been distant, distracted, but I never imagined he was having an affair. "It wasn't an affair," Elena said to the TV. "You weren't even together." Rico shushed her. The interviewer leaned forward. "What do you think of Elena Cruz?" Vanessa's expression turned cold. "I think she's a very smart, very calculating woman who saw an opportunity and took it. Daniel is wealthy, powerful, grieving the loss of his son's mother. He's vulnerable, and she exploited that." "That's not—" Elena started, but her mother squeezed her hand. "Don't let her get to you, mija." But Vanessa wasn't done. "I've done some research into Miss Cruz's background. Did you know she was hired as Daniel's assistant just days before their so-called engagement? That she came from nothing, had no connections, no prospects? And suddenly she's wearing a $2 million ring and living in a penthouse?" The interviewer's eyebrows rose. "Are you suggesting this relationship is transactional?" "I'm suggesting that it's very convenient timing, and I think Daniel's being manipulated by someone who's very good at playing the victim." Vanessa looked directly at the camera. "Daniel, if you're watching this, and I know you are, please think about what you're doing. Think about Liam. Does he really need another woman coming into his life and then leaving when she gets what she wants?" Elena's blood ran cold. Vanessa had just weaponized Liam, used a 4-year-old child to make her point. "This woman is evil," Rico muttered. The interview continued, but Elena couldn't hear it over the ringing in her ears. Her phone was exploding with notifications. She looked down to see messages from numbers she didn't recognize. "Is it true you're using Daniel Hayes? How much is he paying you?" Gold Digger confirmed. "That poor little boy." Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped the phone. Her father picked it up and turned it off without asking. "Mija, you need to tell us the truth," he said gently. "What's really going on?" Elena opened her mouth, but nothing came out. How could she explain this? That she'd sold herself for a week to save their lives? That every word Vanessa had just said was technically true, even though the context was all wrong? "I love him." The lie came out automatically. "I know it seems fast and I know it looks bad, but I love him and he loves me, and that's all that matters." Her mother looked like she wanted to believe it. Her father looked skeptical. Rico looked furious. Elena, if this man is pressuring you, her father started. He's not. I promise. Elena stood up. I need some air. She went out the back door to the tiny courtyard behind the building. It was more alley than yard, really. Cracked concrete, a few struggling plants in pots, the smell of garbage from the bins. But it was quiet. Elena sat on the back steps and let herself cry. Not the pretty crying she'd seen in movies, ugly, gasping sobs that hurt her chest. Everything was falling apart. The story was collapsing. Vanessa's interview would turn public opinion completely, and in 3 days, Elena would have to walk away from all of it and pretend none of it had mattered. The back door opened. Rico sat down beside her. You're a terrible liar, he said. I know. Mom and Dad believe you because they want to, but I can see it. You're miserable. I'm fine. You're crying in an alley. I'm fine, Elena repeated stubbornly. Rico sighed. The surgery's Tuesday. After that, you could walk away. Tell Hayes the deal's off. I can't. We have a contract. Contracts can be broken. Not this one, Elena wiped her eyes. And anyway, I gave my word. 3 more days and then it's over. And then what? You think you're just going to go back to normal after this? Elena, your face is on national television. People know who you are now, where you come from, what you look like. Rico's voice was gentle but firm. There's no going back. He was right. Elena knew he was right, but she couldn't think about that now. She could only think about surviving the next 72 hours. I need to go back, she said, to Daniel's place before the press gets worse. Let me walk you to the corner at least. They went out the front door together. The reporters swarmed immediately, but Rico put himself between them and Elena, his arm around her shoulders. Back off, he said firmly. She's not answering questions. They pushed through to the corner where Marcus was waiting in the black SUV. Rico hugged her hard. You call me if anything happens, he said into her hair. Anything. I don't care what time it is. I will. Promise me, Elena. I promise. She got into the car. Marcus pulled away from the curb, and Elena watched her neighborhood disappear in the rearview mirror, the place she'd grown up, the life she'd been trying to escape. She'd escaped, all right, straight into a different kind of trap. Her phone, turned back on, buzzed with a call. Daniel. Did you watch? She asked instead of hello. Yes. It's bad. It's really bad, Daniel agreed. Margaret's drafting a response, but honestly, Elena, I don't know if it'll help. Vanessa played the victim perfectly. She used Liam. She made this about him. I know. There's something else. Daniel's voice was tight. The board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning. They want to discuss whether this situation constitutes a breach of my duties as CEO. My father's pushing for a vote of no confidence. Elena's stomach dropped. Can they do that? If they have enough votes, yes. They can remove me as CEO. He let out a breath. This is exactly what my father wanted. The chaos, the scandal. It's giving him the ammunition he needs to take control of the company. I'm sorry. Elena's voice was small. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? If I hadn't agreed to this, if you hadn't agreed, I would have fallen apart at that gala and my father would have won anyway. Daniel paused. At least this way, I got a few days of feeling like I had a choice. The car pulled up to his building. More reporters. More cameras. Elena was so tired of cameras. I'm pulling up now, she said. I'll meet you in the lobby. Daniel was waiting when she walked in, looking as exhausted as she felt. He took one look at her face and said, Bad. My family thinks I'm a liar, because I am. Elena's voice cracked. Vanessa thinks I'm a gold digger, because I am, and your board thinks you're an idiot, because you are. Probably, Daniel said. He guided her to the elevator. But we're almost done. 2 more days, and then you're free. 2 more days, 48 hours. It felt like an eternity. They rode the elevator in silence. When they got to the penthouse, Liam came running. Elena, you came back! He threw himself at her legs. Elena caught him automatically. Of course I came back. Daddy said you went to see your family. Do you have a little boy like me? No, but I have a little brother. He's not little anymore, though. He's 23. That's old, Liam said seriously. Elena laughed despite everything. Yeah, it is. Liam pulled her toward his room. Come see my new dinosaur. Daddy got it for me today. Elena let herself be dragged away. Behind her, she heard Daniel on the phone with Margaret, his voice low and tense. She sat on Liam's floor and admired the new dinosaur and tried not to think about how in 2 days she'd never see this little boy again. Liam chattered about school and dinosaurs and his friend Max, who could do a handstand. Elena made the appropriate noises and let his voice wash over her. This was easier than thinking about tomorrow's board meeting or Vanessa's interview or the fact that her entire life was imploding on national television. Elena? Liam's voice got quiet. Are you sad? She looked at him. His hazel eyes, so much like his father's, were worried. A little bit, she admitted. Why? Sometimes grown-up stuff is complicated. Is it because people are being mean about you on TV? Elena's heart broke. You heard that? I heard Daddy talking to Margaret. He was angry. Daddy doesn't get angry a lot. Liam climbed into her lap. But I think you're nice, so the TV people are wrong. Elena wrapped her arms around him and held on tight. Thank you, buddy. You're welcome. He wiggled free and picked up 2 dinosaurs. Want to play? This one's the good guy and this one's the bad guy who becomes good at the end. Sure, Elena said. I'll be the bad guy. You can't be bad. You're too nice. If only he knew. They played until dinner. Daniel ordered Thai food and they ate at the kitchen island like a normal family. Except they weren't a family. They were a businessman, a paid actress, and a child who didn't understand that everything was fake. After Liam went to bed, Elena and Daniel sat in the living room. The TV was on mute, showing coverage of Vanessa's interview. They watched themselves on screen, the kiss at the gala, the press conference, photos from the charity event. Their whole fake relationship playing out in front of them. Tomorrow's going to be hell, Daniel said quietly. Worse than today? Probably. The board meeting's at 9. It'll take most of the day, and there's already a protest being organized outside the building. A protest? Some women's group. They're saying I'm a predator who groomed my assistant. Daniel's voice was flat, which, to be fair, is what it looks like from the outside. Elena didn't know what to say to that. It was what it looked like. Even though it wasn't true, even though the real story was more complicated, from the outside they looked exactly like what people were accusing them of being. Will they vote you out? She asked. I don't know. It depends how many board members my father has gotten to. Daniel rubbed his face. I've spent the last 4 years building this company into something I'm proud of. Something that does actual good in the world, not just makes money. And in 4 days I might lose all of it because I panicked at a party. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. You're not the one who created this mess. He looked at her. Although you are the one who's surviving it better than I expected. I'm not surviving anything. I'm drowning. You're swimming. There's a difference. Daniel turned off the TV. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Elena went to the guest room, but she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed scrolling through social media, which was a mistake. The hashtag gold digger. Elena was trending. People she'd never met were dissecting her entire life, posting old photos, speculating about her motives. Someone had found her high school yearbook photo. She looked so young in it, so hopeful. That girl had no idea what was coming. Around midnight, Elena heard footsteps in the hallway. She opened her door to find Daniel standing there looking lost. Can't sleep either? She asked. Liam had another nightmare. Took forever to get him back down. Daniel leaned against the wall. He keeps asking when you're going to be his mom for real. Daniel, I know we have to tell him the truth eventually. That this is temporary. His voice was rough. I just don't know how. Elena didn't either. She stepped into the hallway. Want some tea? My mom always makes tea when she can't sleep. Sure. They went to the kitchen. Elena found chamomile and honey and made 2 cups. They sat at the island in the dark kitchen, lit only by the glow of the city through the windows. Can I ask you something? Elena said. Yeah. Why did you really kiss me that night? At the gala? She looked at him. You said you panicked, but there were 300 people in that room. You could have pointed at anyone. Why me? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Honest answer? Please. You looked real. He stared into his tea. Everyone else in that room was playing a part, smiling the right way, saying the right things, wearing the right clothes, but you were standing in the corner looking like you'd rather be anywhere else. And I thought if I had to drag someone into this hell with me, at least it should be someone who knew what honesty looked like. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, probably. He took a sip of tea. For what it's worth, I'm glad it was you. You've been braver than I had any right to expect. I'm not brave, I'm just desperate. Bravery and desperation look pretty similar from the outside. They sat in comfortable silence. Outside, the city never slept. Inside, two people who barely knew each other shared tea and truths in the dark. 2 more days, Elena said softly. 2 more days, Daniel agreed. Neither of them mentioned that it was starting to feel like not enough time and too much time all at once. The board meeting started at 9 sharp, and by 9:15, Elena knew Daniel was going to lose. She wasn't in the room. Margaret had insisted it would look worse if she attended, but she could hear raised voices through the closed doors of the conference room. Daniel's voice steady but strained, his father's voice cold and cutting. Other voices she didn't recognize, all of them angry. Elena sat in Daniel's office 3 doors down, staring at her phone. Her mother's surgery was tomorrow morning. Rico had texted that their mom was nervous but ready. Elena should have been there. Instead, she was trapped in a Manhattan high-rise, while the man she'd agreed to help lost everything. The door opened. Margaret slipped in, her face grim. How bad? Elena asked. 7 votes for removal. We need 8 to block it. Margaret sat down heavily. They're debating now. It could go either way. What's his father saying? That Daniel's judgment is compromised. That he's putting personal drama ahead of shareholder interests. That the company can't afford this kind of publicity. Margaret's jaw was tight. He's not wrong about the publicity. Stock dropped another 4% this morning. Elena felt sick. This is my fault. It's Richard Hayes' fault. He orchestrated this whole thing, leaked your records, probably fed information to Vanessa, rallied board members against his own son. Margaret looked at her. You're just the excuse he's using. Great. I feel so much better. Raised voices erupted from the conference room. Both women turned toward the sound. Someone was shouting, then silence. Then the door slammed open and Daniel walked out. His face was blank, but Elena could see the tension in every line of his body. He looked at her and said quietly, We need to talk. Not here. They took the elevator to the roof, the same place they'd stood 5 days ago when this whole nightmare had started. The city spread out below them, indifferent to their personal disasters. They voted you out, Elena said. Not a question. 8-7, my father had the votes. Daniel's voice was eerily calm. Effective immediately. I'm no longer CEO of Hayes Technologies. Elena's stomach dropped. Daniel, I'm so sorry. Don't. He held up a hand. I knew this was coming. I've known since Vanessa's interview, maybe before that. He leaned on the railing. My father's been waiting for an excuse like this for years. I just handed it to him on a silver platter. What happens now? Now he takes over as interim CEO. The board will conduct a search for a permanent replacement, but we all know he'll find a way to make it permanent. Daniel laughed, but it was bitter. Congratulations to him. He finally got what he wanted. But the company, everything you built, doesn't matter. Daniel turned to look at her. None of it matters if I can't protect Liam from becoming what my father wants him to be. I lost the company, but I still have my son. That's what counts. Elena had never seen him like this. Defeated, but somehow lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Or maybe he was just in shock. What about me? She asked. What about our deal? The deal stands. You've done your part. More than your part, actually. He pulled out his phone. I'll have Margaret transfer the rest of the money today. You're free to go whenever you want. Free. Elena should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. Just like that? Just like that. Daniel pocketed his phone. You can stay at the penthouse until you find a new place. I'll make sure the press leaves you alone. And the non-disclosure agreement still stands. You're protected. I don't care about being protected. Elena's voice came out sharper than she intended. Your father just destroyed your career, and you're acting like it's fine, like it doesn't matter. What do you want me to say? Daniel's calm cracked slightly. That I'm angry? I'm furious. That I'm scared? Terrified. But what good does that do? I gambled and I lost. Now I pick up the pieces and figure out what comes next. You don't have to do it alone. Yes, I do. He looked at her steadily. That's the deal, remember? 1 week and then we're done. Well, it's been 5 days and we're done early. You get your money, I get my freedom from an arranged marriage, and we both walk away. And what about Liam? Daniel flinched. I'll tell him the truth, that sometimes things don't work out. He'll be heartbroken. He'll survive. Kids are resilient. But Daniel's voice wavered. Better he learns now that people leave than get more attached. Elena wanted to argue, but what could she say? He was right. This had always been temporary. She'd known that from the start. The fact that she'd started to care about a 4-year-old with dinosaur pajamas and his father who made terrible coffee didn't change the contract they'd signed. Her phone rang. Rico's name flashed on the screen. I need to take this, she said. Daniel nodded and turned back to the skyline. Elena walked to the other side of the roof and answered. Rico? It's Mom. His voice was tight. She's in the hospital. She had an episode last night. Her heart. They moved the surgery up to this afternoon. Elena's world tilted. What? Is she okay? She's stable but scared. Elena, you need to come home. She keeps asking for you. I'm on my way. Elena was already moving toward the door. I'll be there in an hour. She hung up and nearly collided with Daniel. I have to go. My mother, I heard. His face had shifted into something focused. Marcus will drive you. I'll come with... No. Elena stopped him. You have enough to deal with. I can handle this. Elena, please. She looked at him. I need to do this on my own. Daniel studied her face, then nodded slowly. Okay, but call me if you need anything at all. Elena ran for the elevator. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely press the button. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when everything was already falling apart. Marcus was waiting in the lobby. He took one look at her face and said, Where to? Queen's Medical Center. Fast. The drive took 40 minutes through traffic that made Elena want to scream. She watched the city blur past, her mind racing. Her mother had been fine yesterday, nervous about the surgery, but fine. What had happened? Why hadn't anyone called her sooner? Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about Hayes. Guess the money train's over. How does it feel to be yesterday's trash? Elena blocked the number and turned off her phone. The hospital was chaos. Elena pushed through to the cardiac wing and found Rico in the waiting room, his face pale. She's in surgery now, he said. They said it couldn't wait. Something about her valve deteriorating faster than they thought. Where's Papa? In there with her. They only allowed one person. Rico's voice cracked. Elena, what if... Don't. Elena grabbed his hand. She's going to be fine. She has to be fine. They sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs and waited. Minutes felt like hours. Elena watched nurses walk by, doctors consult charts. Families receive news both good and bad. She'd never felt more helpless in her life. Her phone was still off. She didn't know if Daniel had tried to call, didn't know what was happening with the board or the press or any of it. For the first time in 5 days, none of that mattered. 2 hours passed. 3. Finally, a doctor in scrubs emerged through the double doors. Elena and Rico jumped to their feet. Family of Rosa Cruz? That's us, Elena said. Her heart was pounding. Is she okay? The surgery went well. We were able to repair the damaged valve and her heart is responding positively. The doctor smiled. She's going to need several weeks of recovery, but barring complications, she should make a full recovery. Elena's knees nearly gave out. Rico caught her, and they stood there holding each other while relief washed over them in waves. Can we see her? Rico asked. She's in recovery now. Give her another hour, and then you can visit. 2 at a time, short visits only. The doctor left. Elena and Rico sank back into the chairs. She's okay, Rico said, like he couldn't believe it. Elena, she's okay. I know. Elena was crying and couldn't stop. I know. Her father emerged from the recovery area, his eyes red. He pulled both his children into a hug, and they stood there in the waiting room, three people who'd survived on nothing but stubbornness and love, holding each other up. An hour later, Elena was allowed to see her mother. She lay in the hospital bed looking small and fragile, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily. But her eyes opened when Elena came in, and she smiled. "Mija," she whispered, "you came. Of course I came." Elena took her mother's hand carefully, mindful of the IV. "How do you feel?" "Like I was hit by a truck." Her mother's smile widened slightly. "But alive. Very alive." "The doctor said the surgery went perfectly." "Because of you." Her mother squeezed her hand weakly. "The money you gave us, we never could have afforded this hospital, these doctors. You saved my life, Elena." Elena's throat closed. "I just did what I had to do." "With that man, Daniel Hayes?" Her mother's eyes were knowing. "I watched the news this morning. They're saying terrible things about both of you." "I know." "Is any of it true?" Elena could have lied, should have lied. But sitting here with her mother who'd almost died, who'd been saved by money Elena had earned through deception, she couldn't do it anymore. "Some of it," she said quietly. "Not all of it, but some." Her mother studied her face. "Do you love him? Did she?" Elena thought about Daniel's rare smiles, the way he was with Liam, the exhaustion in his eyes when he talked about his father, the quiet moments on the roof when he'd let his guard down. "I don't know," she admitted. "I didn't think I would, but then he became real to you." "Yeah." Elena wiped her eyes. "But it doesn't matter. Our deal is over. He got what he needed, and I got what I needed, and now we're done." "Is that what you want?" Elena didn't answer, couldn't answer. Her mother sighed. "When I met your father, I thought he was completely wrong for me. Too serious, too traditional, too boring. But he was kind. And he stayed. And 30 years later, I can't imagine my life without him." She squeezed Elena's hand again. "Love isn't always fireworks, Mija. Sometimes it's just finding someone who stays." A nurse came in to check vitals, and Elena was ushered out. She found Rico in the hallway on his phone, his expression dark. "What's wrong?" Elena asked. Rico turned his phone to show her. A news alert. "Breaking. Vanessa Hartwell files lawsuit against Daniel Hayes and Elena Cruz for fraud and emotional distress." Elena read the headline 3 times before it sank in. "She's suing us? Claiming you conspired to humiliate her, demanding $10 million in damages." Rico scrolled down. "There's more. Someone leaked emails between Daniel and his lawyers discussing a settlement agreement with you. The press is calling it proof that the whole relationship was a business arrangement." "Which it was," Elena said numbly. "Which makes it look like you both committed fraud." Rico's voice was tight. "Elena, this is bad. Really bad. You could be charged criminally." Elena's mind was spinning. "I need to call Margaret." She turned her phone back on, and it immediately exploded with notifications. Missed calls from Margaret, from Daniel, from numbers she didn't recognize. Text messages, emails, news alerts. All of it screaming the same thing. The truth was coming out, and it was going to destroy them both. She called Margaret. The lawyer answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" "Queens Medical Center. My mother just had surgery." "Is she okay?" "She's fine, Margaret. What's happening?" "Vanessa's lawyers filed a civil suit this morning. They're alleging fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and breach of contract." Margaret's voice was rapid fire. "But the real problem is the emails. Someone in Daniel's legal team leaked correspondence about your compensation agreement. The press is calling it smoking gun evidence that you were paid to seduce him." "I wasn't paid to seduce him. I was paid to pretend to be engaged." "The distinction won't matter to a jury." Margaret paused. "Elena, you need to get somewhere safe. The press is going to descend on you the second they figure out where you are." As if summoned, Elena saw a news van pulling into the hospital parking lot. "Too late," she muttered. "They're already here." "Then you need to leave. Now. Don't talk to anyone. Don't answer any questions. Get somewhere private and wait for my call." "What about Daniel?" "He's dealing with his own problems. The board is threatening legal action for misuse of company resources. His father is calling for a full investigation." Margaret's voice softened slightly. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Elena hung up and turned to Rico. I need to get out of here. Come home. To Mom and Dad's. The press already knows where they live. Then where? Elena didn't know. She had nowhere to go. Her apartment would be swarmed. Daniel's penthouse was out of the question. She couldn't drag her family into this more than she already had. Her phone rang. Daniel's name. Hello? Are you safe? His voice was tense. For now. I'm at the hospital with my family. How's your mother? She's okay. Surgery went well. Elena watched the news van parking. Daniel, about the lawsuit. I know. Margaret told me. He paused. Elena, I'm going to fix this. Vanessa's lawyers made a mistake leaking those emails. It proves they had access to privileged communication, which means they hacked or bribed someone. Margaret's already filing counterclaims. That doesn't change the fact that the whole world now knows this was fake. No, it doesn't. Daniel's voice was quiet. But it changes the narrative. We're not con artists. We were two people trying to escape a controlling father and an arranged marriage. That's not fraud. It's survival. You really believe that? I have to, he exhaled. Listen, I have a house upstate, about 2 hours north of the city. Nobody knows about it. I bought it under an LLC years ago as a place to take Liam when things got too crazy. You could stay there. Lay low until this dies down. I can't just run away. You can't stay here, not with reporters circling. His voice was firm. Please, Elena, let me help you. After everything you've done for me, let me do this one thing. Elena looked at Rico, who was watching her with worried eyes. At the news van, where a reporter was already getting out with a camera. At the hospital where her mother was recovering from surgery that Elena's deal with Daniel had paid for. Okay, she said. Send me the address. Marcus will pick you up in 20 minutes. I'll meet you there tonight. You don't have to... I know, but I want to. He paused. See you soon. He hung up. Elena turned to Rico. I have to go. I figured. Rico hugged her. Be careful and call me every day. I will. Elena slipped out a side entrance before the reporters could spot her. Marcus was waiting in an unmarked car, smart thinking. She climbed in the back and they pulled away just as the news van rounded the building. They drove north out of the city, leaving behind the cameras and chaos and judgment. Elena watched Queens disappear in the rearview mirror and felt something in her chest loosen slightly. For the first time in days, she could breathe. The house was small, tucked into the woods near a lake. Nothing like Daniel's penthouse. It looked almost normal. Wooden siding, a front porch with rocking chairs, a yard with actual grass. Marcus let her in with a key and then left, saying he'd be back later with supplies. Elena stood in the living room and looked around. There were toys in a basket. Children's books on shelves, photos on the walls. Daniel and Liam at various ages, building sandcastles, carving pumpkins, reading together on a couch. This was Daniel's real life, not the penthouse or the galas or the board meetings. This. She found the guest room and collapsed on the bed. Exhaustion hit her like a wave. She'd been running on adrenaline and coffee for 5 days, and it was finally catching up. She closed her eyes just for a minute. When she woke up, it was dark outside and there were voices downstairs. She checked her phone, 7 p.m. She'd slept for 6 hours. Elena went downstairs and found Daniel in the kitchen, cooking something that smelled amazing. Liam was at the table coloring. "You're here," Liam said, looking up with a huge smile. "Daddy said you were sleeping, but I didn't believe him." "I was sleeping." Elena's voice was hoarse. "What are you guys doing here?" "Daddy said we're having a vacation," Liam announced, "because sometimes you need to go away from the city when things are stressful." Elena looked at Daniel. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Thought you could use some company," he said. "Plus, the penthouse is being staked out by about 40 reporters. Figured this was safer for everyone." "You didn't have to come." "I know." He turned back to the stove. "Hungry? I'm making pasta. It's one of 3 things I can actually cook." Elena sat at the table across from Liam. He showed her his drawing, a dinosaur fighting a dragon. She made appropriate impressed noises while her mind tried to process what was happening. Daniel had lost his company. His reputation was in ruins. He was being sued for fraud, and he was here making pasta like it was just another Tuesday. They ate dinner together, the three of them. Liam chattered about his day, about the drive upstate, about seeing a deer in the yard. Daniel listened and asked questions and looked at his son like he was the most important person in the world. After dinner, Daniel took Liam upstairs for bath and bed. Elena cleaned up the kitchen and tried not to think about how domestic this all felt, how normal, how much she wanted it to be real. Daniel came back down an hour later. He's asleep, wore himself out coloring. He's a good kid. Yeah, he is. Daniel poured 2 glasses of wine and handed her one. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her out to his back porch. The lake stretched out before them, dark and still under the stars. The only sound was crickets and the gentle lap of water against the shore. I bought this place right after Liam was born, Daniel said. When I realized I was going to be doing this alone, I needed somewhere that wasn't about the company or my father or any of it. Just me and my son. It's beautiful. It's peaceful. He sat in one of the rocking chairs. I come here whenever things get too heavy. Remind myself what actually matters. Elena sat beside him. They rocked in silence for a while, drinking wine and listening to the night. Margaret called, Daniel said eventually. Vanessa's lawsuit is falling apart. Her lawyers got sloppy with the evidence. They can't prove where the emails came from without admitting they obtained them illegally. She'll probably drop it within a week. And the board? They're still investigating, but they don't have grounds for legal action. I didn't misuse company resources. Everything I did was with my own money. He paused. Of course, I still don't have a company to go back to. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've been thinking, maybe this is a good thing. I've spent 10 years building something my father could control. Maybe it's time to build something he can't touch. Elena looked at him. Like what? I don't know yet. Something that matters. Something that helps people instead of just making money. He smiled slightly. I've got enough money. What I need is a purpose. That's very philosophical for someone who lost everything 5 days ago. Yeah, well, sometimes losing everything is the only way to figure out what you actually want. He turned to look at her. What about you? What do you want? Elena hadn't let herself think about that. She'd been so focused on surviving, on getting through the week, on earning the money to save her mother. She hadn't thought about what came after. I don't know, she admitted. I thought I wanted stability, security, enough money that I never had to worry again. She looked out at the lake. But now I have that and I still feel lost. Maybe we're both lost together then. They sat in comfortable silence. Elena felt the tension of the past week slowly draining away. Out here, away from the cameras and the lies and the judgment, she could almost believe they were just 2 normal people having a normal conversation. Can I ask you something? Daniel said. Sure. That night at the gala, when I kissed you, did you hate me? Elena thought about it. In that moment, yes, absolutely. And now? Now, she considered. Now I think you're an idiot who made a desperate choice and dragged me into it, but I don't hate you. That's something, I guess. What about you? Elena asked. Do you regret it? Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I regret how it happened. I regret not warning you, not giving you a choice. I regret that it cost you your privacy and your peace. He looked at her. But I don't regret meeting you. Even with all of this chaos, I don't regret that. Elena's heart did something complicated in her chest. Daniel, I know what the deal was. He cut her off gently. 1 week, and then we're done. I'm not trying to change that. I just wanted you to know that you've been the best thing to happen to me in a long time, even if it was fake. It wasn't all fake, Elena heard herself say. Daniel's eyes widened slightly. What? Liam. The way you are with him, that's real. And the way you talked about wanting to break free from your father, that was real too. She swallowed hard. And sitting here right now, this feels real. Elena, I'm not saying I want to change the deal, she said quickly. I'm just saying that somewhere in all the lies, there were pieces of truth. And I think maybe we both needed that. Daniel reached over and took her hand. Not for show, not for cameras, just because. His palm was warm and slightly rough, and it felt right. They sat there holding hands and watching the stars reflect on the lake. Tomorrow, they'd have to deal with lawsuits and investigations and reporters. Tomorrow, reality would come crashing back. But tonight, in this small house by the water, they could just be two people who'd found each other in the middle of a disaster and decided to hold on. "One more day," Daniel said softly. "The week's up tomorrow." "I know. We should probably talk about what happens next." "Probably." But neither of them moved. They just sat there, hands linked, while the night grew deeper around them and something neither of them wanted to name settled between them like a promise they weren't ready to make. Elena woke to the smell of pancakes and the sound of Liam's laughter drifting up from the kitchen. For a moment, still caught between sleep and waking, she forgot where she was, forgot about the lawsuits and the cameras and the fact that today was supposed to be the end of everything. Then reality crashed back in. 7 days. The deal was done. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what she was supposed to feel. Relief? Grief? Some combination of both? Last night on the porch with Daniel had felt like something shifting, like tectonic plates moving beneath the surface of their arrangement. But morning light had a way of making night conversations feel foolish. Her phone buzzed. Margaret's name flashed across the screen. "Good morning to you too," Elena answered. "We have a problem." Margaret's voice was tight. Or maybe an opportunity. I can't decide which. Elena sat up. "What happened?" "Vanessa's legal team called an hour ago. They want to settle. They'll drop all charges, issue a public apology, and pay your legal fees. In exchange, they want complete silence from both you and Daniel about what really happened." "They're trying to buy us off." "Essentially, yes. They know their case is falling apart. The leaked emails came from her publicist's computer. We have proof. If this goes to court, Vanessa loses everything." Margaret paused. "But here's the interesting part. Before they'll agree to settle, they want confirmation that your relationship with Daniel really was fake. They're demanding to see the contract." Elena's stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because if they can prove the whole thing was a business arrangement, they can spin it differently. Make it about two con artists getting what they deserved instead of Vanessa being a jealous ex who broke the law. So we're all terrible people. Great. The question is whether you want to give them the contract. It would end this quickly, but it would also mean admitting publicly that none of it was real." Elena looked out the window. Daniel was in the yard with Liam, teaching him to skip stones across the lake. Liam's throw fell short, and Daniel laughed, ruffling his son's hair. It looked like a scene from a normal life, a real life. "What does Daniel think?" Elena asked. "I haven't asked him yet. I wanted to talk to you first." Margaret's voice softened slightly. "Elena, this is your choice. The contract protects you financially no matter what. But your reputation, your privacy, what people think of you, that's something only you can decide about." Elena watched Daniel pick up Liam and swing him around, both of them laughing. She thought about the past week, the lies and the terror and the constant performance, but also the quiet moments, the midnight tea in the kitchen, Liam's dinosaur stories, the feeling of Daniel's hand in hers last night. "Tell them no," she said. "What?" "Tell Vanessa's lawyers no. We're not giving them the contract." "Elena, if this goes to court, then it goes to court. I'm done letting other people control the narrative." Elena's voice was firm. "Vanessa broke the law. She hacked private communications and tried to destroy us. I'm not going to help her save face." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "You know this means more publicity, more scrutiny. They'll dig even deeper into your life. Let them dig. They won't find anything worse than what's already out there." Elena stood up. "I grew up poor. I made a deal with a desperate man, and somewhere along the way it stopped being entirely fake. None of that is criminal. None of that is shameful. Daniel's going to have opinions about this. Then I'll talk to him, but this is my decision." "Okay." Margaret actually sounded impressed. "I'll tell Vanessa's team we're rejecting their offer. Be prepared for them to get nasty. I've been dealing with nasty for a week. I think I can handle it." Elena hung up and got dressed. When she came downstairs, Daniel and Liam were making a mess in the kitchen. Pancake batter everywhere. Liam had it in his hair. "We're cooking," Liam announced proudly. "I see that." Elena grabbed a towel and wiped batter off the counter. "How's it going?" "Daddy burned 3 pancakes," Liam said with the brutal honesty of a 4-year-old. "They weren't burned, they were crispy," Daniel protested. He looked at Elena and his expression shifted. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." I just need to talk to you. After breakfast. They ate burned pancakes and fresh strawberries. Liam told a long, rambling story about a dream he'd had involving friendly dinosaurs and ice cream. Elena tried to focus, but her mind kept drifting to the conversation she needed to have with Daniel. Finally, Liam was settled in front of a movie, and they could talk. They went out to the porch, the same spot where they'd sat last night. Margaret called, Elena said. Vanessa wants to settle, but she wants proof our relationship was fake first. Daniel's jaw tightened. So she can use it to justify what she did. Basically, yes. What did you tell her? I said no. Elena looked at him. I'm not giving them the contract. I'm not helping Vanessa get away with this. Daniel studied her face. You know what that means. The lawsuit goes forward. More depositions, more lawyers, more chances for things to come out that we don't want public. I know. And you're okay with that? I'm tired of being scared, Elena said. I'm tired of letting other people decide what story gets told about my life. So yeah, I'm okay with it. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. Okay. Then we fight. Just like that? Just like that. He leaned back in his chair. I've spent my whole life letting my father make decisions for me. Where I went to school, what company I built, who I was supposed to marry. I'm done with that. If you're ready to fight, then so am I. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Daniel said, There's something else we need to talk about. Elena's stomach clenched. The deal. Yeah, the deal. He turned to face her. It's been 7 days. You fulfilled your end of the contract. The money's in your account. Technically, you're free to go whenever you want. Technically. Elena, I need to know what you want. Not what the contract says, not what's logical, not what makes sense for your family or your future. What do you actually want? It was the same question he'd asked last night. Elena still didn't have a good answer. I don't know, she admitted. A week ago, I wanted money and security and a way to help my family. I got all of that, but now? Now I don't know if I can just walk away and pretend none of this mattered. She looked at him. You're not what I expected. This whole thing isn't what I expected. What did you expect? I expected you to be just another selfish rich guy using people to get what he wanted. And you are that, kind of. But you're also a father who reads dinosaur books at midnight and makes terrible pancakes and actually cares about doing something meaningful with your life. She swallowed hard. And I expected to hate every second of this week. But I didn't. Not all of it. Daniel reached over and took her hand. I hired you because I was desperate, and you looked like you could survive a storm. I didn't expect you to be brave or funny or so good with my son that he asks about you every night before bed. I didn't expect to actually care about what happens to you after this is over. Daniel, I'm not asking you to stay, he cut her off gently. I know this started as a transaction. I know you have your own life to get back to. I just want you to know that if you did want to stay, not because of the contract, not because of money, but because you wanted to, that would be okay. More than okay. Elena's heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere in the middle of this disaster, I started falling for you. The real you. Not the polished version we showed the cameras, but the woman who stands up to my father and cries over her family and reads stories to a 4-year-old she barely knows because he asked nicely. Daniel's voice was rough. And I know that's insane given how we met. I know it's probably the stupidest thing I could admit right now. But you asked what I wanted, and that's the truth. I want you to stay. Not as my fake fiancé, as something real. Elena couldn't breathe. This wasn't supposed to happen. They had a deal, a clean ending. She was supposed to take her money and walk away and build a normal life far from his world of chaos and cameras. Except she didn't want to anymore. I can't just move into your penthouse and play house, she said. I'm not built for that world. The galas and the society people and the constant judgment, I'll never fit in there. Then we don't go back to that world. Daniel squeezed her hand. I meant what I said yesterday. I'm done building things my father can control. I want to do something different, something that matters, and I want to do it somewhere Liam can have a normal childhood. He gestured at the lake, the trees, the quiet. Maybe somewhere like this. You'd give up Manhattan, the company, all of it? I already lost the company, and Manhattan never felt like home anyway. It felt like a cage. He looked at her intently. Elena, I know this is fast. I know it's crazy. But the past week taught me something. Life's too short to pretend you don't care about things that matter. You matter. What happens between us matters. And I don't want to lose that just because the contract says we're done. Elena felt tears burning her eyes. I'm scared. Me too. What if we try this and it doesn't work? What if the real version is nothing like the fake version? Then at least we'll know we tried. At least we didn't throw away something that could have been real just because we were too afraid to find out. Daniel brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. Stay. Not forever if you don't want to, but stay long enough to figure out what this could be. Before Elena could answer, the sliding door burst open and Liam came running out. Daddy! Elena, come quick! There's a turtle in the yard! The moment broke. Daniel laughed and stood up. We should probably go see this turtle. Probably, Elena agreed. They followed Liam around to the side of the house where a small turtle was indeed making its way slowly across the grass. Liam was delighted, asking a million questions. Where was it going? What did it eat? Could they keep it? We can't keep it, buddy, Daniel said. It has its own family to get back to. But what if it doesn't want to go back? What if it likes it here? Daniel glanced at Elena. She felt her face heat. Then I guess it can stay as long as it wants, he said quietly. They spent the afternoon by the lake. Liam built castles in the sand while Daniel and Elena sat on the dock, feet dangling in the water. They didn't talk about the conversation on the porch. They didn't need to. The answer was in the way Elena didn't leave, the way she stayed through lunch and into the evening, the way she helped put Liam to bed and read him 3 dinosaur books even though he only asked for 1. After Liam was asleep, Elena found Daniel on the porch again. He had 2 beers this time instead of wine. We need to call Margaret, Elena said, sitting down. Tell her we're rejecting the settlement. Already did. She's filing our response tomorrow. What did she say? That we're both idiots, but she respects our choice. Daniel took a sip of his beer. Also, that the press is going to have a field day when they find out we're not backing down. Let them. Elena accepted the beer he handed her. I'm done caring what strangers think about my life. They sat in comfortable silence. The stars were coming out, reflecting on the dark water. I've been thinking about your offer, Elena said eventually. Daniel went very still. Yeah? I can't just jump into this. I need time to figure out who I am outside of survival mode. I've spent my whole life either struggling to get by or pretending to be someone I'm not. I need to figure out who Elena Cruz actually is when she's not playing a role. Okay. Daniel's voice was careful, but I don't want to walk away either. Elena looked at him. So maybe we try something in between. Maybe I get my own place nearby. Maybe we date like normal people do, dinners and movies and getting to know each other without contracts or cameras. Maybe we see if what we felt this week holds up in regular life. You want to date me? A smile was tugging at Daniel's mouth. I want to find out if I want to date you. There's a difference. Fair enough. Daniel held up his beer. To finding out. Elena clinked her bottle against his. To finding out. The lawsuit took 3 months to resolve. Vanessa's case fell apart exactly as Margaret had predicted. The evidence was obtained illegally, her claims of fraud couldn't be substantiated, and when Elena and Daniel's lawyers deposed her, she contradicted herself so many times that even her own attorneys looked embarrassed. The judge dismissed all charges with prejudice and ordered Vanessa to pay legal fees. She tried one last publicity stunt, a tearful interview about being wronged by the justice system. But by then, the public had moved on to other scandals. She faded back into the society circles she came from, bitter and diminished. Richard Hayes' attempt to destroy his son backfired spectacularly. A journalist investigating the leaked emails traced them back to Richard's office. The revelation that he'd sabotaged his own son, risked the company's reputation, and invaded privacy for petty revenge cost him everything. The board forced him into retirement. Several business partners severed ties. And Daniel, in a move that surprised everyone, bought enough shares from disgruntled investors to regain a controlling interest in Hayes Technologies. He didn't take the CEO position back. Instead, he installed Margaret as CEO, the first woman to run the company in its 60-year history, and created a new division focused on technology access for underserved communities. He called it the Rosa Cruz Initiative, after Elena's mother. Elena got her own apartment 3 miles from the lake house. It was small but bright, with big windows and a kitchen that was all hers. She enrolled in business classes at the community college, finally finishing the degree she'd abandoned years ago. And twice a week, she drove to the lake house for dinner with Daniel and Liam. They took it slow. Real dates that sometimes went well and sometimes ended in arguments because they were both stubborn and neither knew how to be in a relationship that wasn't built on necessity. They learned each other in pieces. Daniel couldn't stand the sound of chewing. Elena was terrible at mornings. Liam thought all vegetables were poison except carrots. 6 months after the week that changed everything, Elena's mother had a party to celebrate her full recovery. The tiny apartment in Queens was packed with family and neighbors, music and food and laughter that rattled the walls. Daniel showed up with Liam, looking completely out of place in his expensive clothes among Elena's relatives in their thrift store best. Elena's father pulled her aside. "That man, he treats you well?" "He does, Papa." "And the boy? You love him?" Elena watched Liam showing Rico his new dinosaur, talking a mile a minute. "Yeah, I love him." "Good." Her father squeezed her shoulder. "Money doesn't matter. What matters is that someone stays, that someone shows up even when it's hard." Daniel had shown up. Every dinner, every class presentation Elena stressed about, every hospital visit when her mother had checkups. He showed up. A year after the deal, on a Tuesday afternoon with no cameras or fanfare, Daniel asked Elena to marry him for real. They were at the lake house on the dock where they'd spent so many evenings talking. Liam was helping, holding a ring box in his small hands. "Will you marry my daddy?" Liam asked solemnly. "For real this time. So you can be my mom forever?" Elena looked at this child who'd stolen her heart, at the man who'd accidentally become her home, at the life they'd somehow built from lies and desperation. "Yes," she said, "for real this time." The wedding was small. Elena's family, a handful of Daniel's friends who'd stuck by him through the scandal, Margaret, who cried into a handkerchief throughout the ceremony. They got married at the lake house with Liam as the ring bearer, wearing his Sunday best and carrying the rings with the seriousness of someone entrusted with state secrets. No reporters, no cameras, no performance. Just two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their own bad decisions and chosen to build something real from the ashes. Elena's mother told her before the ceremony, "You know what I've learned? Life doesn't care about our plans. It throws us into situations we never asked for and makes us choose who we want to be. You could have walked away a year ago with your money and never looked back. The fact that you stayed tells me everything I need to know about the kind of person you are." "What kind is that?" Elena asked. "The kind who knows that love is a choice you make every day, not just once." The reception was in the backyard. Someone rigged up Christmas lights in the trees, even though it was July. Rico made a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. Liam fell asleep in Elena's arms during the dancing, his head heavy on her shoulder. Daniel found them later, sitting on the porch steps while the party continued behind them. "Hi, wife," he said, sitting down beside her. "Hi, husband." Elena still couldn't quite believe it. "This is real, right? This actually happened?" "Last I checked, yeah." Daniel put his arm around her shoulders, careful not to wake Liam. "No regrets?" Elena thought about the girl she'd been a year ago, desperate, scared, willing to sell a week of her life for money. She thought about everything that had happened since, the terror and humiliation and constant scrutiny, but also the unexpected joy, the family they'd become, the life they were building together. "Only one," she said. "What's that?" "I wish I'd met you a different way. Without the lies and the contracts and the chaos. Something normal." Daniel considered this. "You know what I think? I don't think we would have found each other any other way. Normal doesn't bring people like us together. We needed the disaster. We needed to see each other at our worst before we could appreciate the best." "That's very philosophical. I have my moments." He kissed the top of her head. "Besides, this way we get a hell of a story to tell at dinner parties." "We're not telling this story at dinner parties." "Fine. Then we'll tell our grandkids." Elena's heart squeezed. Grandkids. A future stretching out ahead of them, full of possibilities neither of them had imagined when they'd signed that contract in his lawyer's office. Liam stirred in her arms, mumbling something about dinosaurs in his sleep. Elena held him closer. "You know what I learned?" she said quietly. Money can save your life. It paid for my mom's surgery, gave my family security, opened doors I never knew existed. But it can't make you happy. That's something you have to build yourself with people who matter. And do I matter? Daniel asked, though the smile in his voice said he already knew the answer. You matter. You both matter. Elena looked at her husband and her son, because that's what Liam was now, hers, and felt something settle deep in her chest. More than I ever thought possible. The party wound down. Guests left in small groups, hugging and promising to visit soon. Elena's parents were the last to go, her mother kissing her cheek and whispering, "You did good, mija. Better than good." Daniel carried a sleeping Liam upstairs while Elena cleaned up. When he came back down, he found her on the porch, looking out at the lake. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different everything is from where I thought I'd be." Elena leaned back against him. "A year ago, I was working 3 jobs and trying not to drown. Now I'm married to a billionaire and living a life that feels like someone else's story." "It's your story now." "I know. That's the weird part." She turned to face him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being desperate enough to kiss a stranger at a party. For giving me a chance to save my family. For seeing something in me worth keeping when the week was over." She touched his face. "For staying." Daniel pulled her close. "Thank you for saying yes." Both times. They stood there on the porch of the house that had become their sanctuary, holding each other while the stars came out over the lake. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. The water lapped gently at the shore. The world kept turning, indifferent to their small happiness. But that was okay. They didn't need the world's approval. They'd learned that the hard way. What they needed was each other, and the choice to keep choosing each other, and the understanding that real love wasn't the dramatic kiss in front of cameras. Real love was midnight feedings and terrible pancakes and reading the same dinosaur book 17 times because your kid asked. It was showing up when things got hard. It was admitting you were wrong and trying to do better. It was building something together that neither of you could have built alone. Elena had taken a deal with a desperate man, and somewhere along the way, in the spaces between the lies, they'd stumbled into the truth. That money could open doors, but it couldn't fill the emptiness. That sometimes the worst decisions led to the best outcomes. That love wasn't something you found fully formed. It was something you built, carefully and deliberately, from whatever broken pieces you had to work with. She'd started this journey as a girl from Queens trying to survive. She'd ended it as a woman who'd learned that surviving wasn't enough. You had to actually live. You had to let people in. You had to risk everything on the possibility that maybe, just maybe, something real could come from something fake. And sometimes, if you were very lucky and very brave, it did. 2 years later, Elena stood in the office of the Rosa Cruz Initiative, looking at the wall of photos. Kids in underserved communities with new computers. Families accessing internet for the first time. Scholarships awarded to students who looked like she once did, hungry for education but short on options. Daniel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "The board approved your proposal. We're expanding to 10 more cities next year." "Really?" Elena turned in his arms, grinning. "Daniel, that's incredible." "You're incredible. This whole thing was your idea." It had been. The scholarship program, the community tech centers, the partnerships with local schools. Elena had found her purpose in helping kids who were like she'd been, smart and determined but held back by circumstances beyond their control. She'd also found that she was good at this, really good. The business classes had led to a degree. The degree had led to an offer to run the initiative full-time. And now she was building something that mattered, using the resources that had fallen into her lap to create opportunities for others. "I need to pick up Liam from school," she said, checking her watch. "You want to come?" "Can't. I have a meeting with investors for the new startup." Daniel had launched his own company 6 months ago, focused on sustainable technology. It was smaller than Hayes Technologies, but it was his, built on his terms without his father's shadow hanging over it. "How's it going?" "Better than expected. Turns out people actually want to invest in things that help the planet instead of just making rich people richer. Who knew?" He kissed her forehead. "I'll be home by 6. We're still doing dinner with your parents tonight, right?" "Yeah, Mom's cooking." Which meant too much food and her father telling the same stories he always told, and Rico bringing whatever girl he was dating this month. Perfect. I love your mom's cooking. Elena watched him leave, then gathered her things. On her way out, she passed a framed photo from their wedding day. She and Daniel and Liam, all of them laughing at something Rico had said. They looked happy. Real. She thought about the girl she'd been, standing in that ballroom in a borrowed dress, getting kissed by a stranger in front of cameras. That girl had been terrified and desperate and willing to lie for money. Elena didn't judge her for that. She understood her. Survival made you do things you never thought you'd do. Desperation stripped away pride. And sometimes, in the middle of making all the wrong choices for all the right reasons, you stumbled into something worth keeping. She'd learned that love wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about showing up. It was about choosing someone every day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. It was about building a life together from whatever materials you had, even if those materials included lies and contracts and fake engagements. What mattered wasn't how you started. What mattered was what you built from that start. Whether you took the broken pieces and made something whole. Whether you had the courage to turn something fake into something real. Elena locked the office and headed to her car. She had a son to pick up from school, a husband to have dinner with later, a mother who was healthy and thriving, and a life that looked nothing like what she'd imagined but felt exactly right. She'd been paid to play a role for a week. She'd ended up finding a family for a lifetime. And if that wasn't proof that sometimes the universe had better plans than the ones you made for yourself, Elena didn't know what was.